All right, we're back from lunch. We're back in session. Madam Clerk, item number 22.
Item 22 is from the Board of Supervisors to receive a presentation and annual report from the IHSS Advisory Committee.
Good afternoon, Board. My name is Bonnie Newman. I'm the chairperson of the IHSS Advisory Committee, and I've handed you a packet of information. And for the audience, I have 5 handouts here if you'd like to come and follow along. I'm going to give you a very brief synopsis of what we've accomplished during the past year and what we hope to do. We're going to focus on the packet of information that has what's on the board up there. Also, I included some information about the program. The thing with the little circles is all the entities that are involved in the IHSS program. You can see there's at least a dozen different programs and agencies that deal with IHSS, county-wide and statewide. The other information that I gave you is a monthly report on our activities in IHSS. And before I get into the entire program, I'd just like you to look at that, please, and notice how many consumers there are in our county and how many providers there are. Something that I found is extremely interesting is the majority of our clients are not senior citizens. They are approximately 2/3 of our clients are under the age of 65, some as young as newborns. And people over the age of 80, we have approximately 60 people in this program. In each district, you can see how many clients are, well, they're not by district, but they're almost by district on consumer locations, who you're representing in your district. Okay, Marty. Okay, the goal of the IHSS program is to support income eligible, and that's low income people, elderly, blind, and disabled persons of all ages by providing access to personal care assistance and enabling consumers to remain safely in their homes and avoid early placement in a care facility. That's good. You can leave that right there, yes. The advisory committee consists of 11 members of our community, and we are charged with providing ongoing advice and recommendations regarding the IHSS program and the public authority to the governing board, that's you folks, and any administrative body or agency in the county that's related to the delivery and administration of in-home supportive services. Next slide. In order to accomplish those goals, some of our duties and responsibilities include staying informed and educated on IHSS and the public authority issues, and those change month to month. New mandates come out all the time. We are to provide consumer and provider input into IHSS and the public authority. That's by being a forum where people can participate. And we participate in outreach, educational, and advocacy activities. And one of your handouts is a newsletter and our program card. and our resource list. Our other duties and responsibilities are to provide a forum for consumers and providers of personal assistance services, advocates, and other interested parties to participate in public authority policy and program development. This is a moving program. Things change every year, and we want to keep appraised and ahead of that. We're also charged with reviewing, advising, and making recommendations to the governing board, that's you all, on pending legislation that may impact the IHSS program, their consumers, the providers, and the public authority. And finally, our last mandate is to provide input on collective bargaining issues. We've had a little concern that we're not supposed to be involved in union activities, and as a committee we are not involved, but we certainly have, through our forum, gleaned enough information to advise you on possible changes and improvements that could be made to the program, as well as how the union that represents the home care providers is or isn't working for the program. So, this past year we've struggled. We have a total of 11 members. Last year we lost 2 to death. This year we've already lost 2 to health issues. So once again, we're appealing to you to look to your constituents to find out who in your area can serve on our committee and help us make this determination of where this program could go. Now, I haven't really gotten a whole lot of referrals from you all, so you need to dig deep. Ask the people that you meet with who could serve in this capacity. I've noticed that you're thinking of eliminating the Commission on Aging later. That's very much tied in with this. And although the majority of our consumers are not senior citizens, we're all going to be senior citizens someday, and we may need this program as well as the younger people who are still below the age of 65. What we do is we keep people safe in their homes so they don't have to go into a facility. I know you've heard me say before that the average length of life in a facility is 13 months. 13 months is not a very long time to live in a place that you're unfamiliar with, and you may not be getting the best of care. People work in shifts in facilities. Very seldom do they form bonds with the people and look out for them. So even when people go into facilities, there's a need to watch over the person, the consumer, who is in need of assistance. We have, over the years, recruited new kinds of people, not just IHSS consumers, but also consumers of home care services that are paid for private funds or through insurance. So those people also qualify to serve on our board. Right now, we're down 2 consumers and 2 members of the public. So please help us fill those slots so that we can perform adequately and we can have a full spectrum of input from all the people that we serve through IHSS. Something that the committee has entertained is the idea of creating a private pay program for people who aren't low income or who may be low income but don't wish to participate in the program. They would be able to pay through their own means someone to come and assist them in the home. We're talking about housekeeping, We're talking about transportation. We're also talking about personal care services, which include assistance with bathing, assistance with medication, sometimes assistance with injection, and sometimes assistance with everything when you have a severely handicapped child or someone who is maybe no longer a child but still is in need of full-on assistance. Not all of our clients are physically disabled. Some of our clients are mentally disabled. Some of our clients are both. And oftentimes those clients need 24 hours supervision to keep them safe. And the maximum this program will pay someone is 9 hours a day. When you're working 24 hours a day and only getting paid for 9 hours, it becomes a little unwieldy. One of the things that we've found out is to have somebody come in and assist you, you're going to have to pay them every hour they're in the home. So if you need to take a day off and go to Sacramento to have a doctor's appointment and you're gone 12 hours, as a provider, your pay is going to be that entire day plus part of the next day's pay. So you will end up being shorted the second day. Are there any questions?
More questions?
Thank you.
Supervisor Garamendi.
Thank you very much, Bonnie. As you know, I serve on your committee.
Yes.
I'm liaison from the board to your committee, and I think this committee is turning a new page, and I think we're going to have some really good advice for the board in the upcoming year. I think you guys are getting into some meaty issues, so thank you for your work.
One of the things, yes, one of the things you're helping us is to broaden the, to accommodate a new kind of consumer, which would be children who do not have a voice, who are represented by a parent, a custodian, or a guardian, and to allow them to participate on our committee, because in all the years that this committee's been in effect, and it's been like 15 years, there has never been anybody stepping up and representing the children or the young adults or the old adults who are not able to verbalize their needs or express how they feel or what they want. So and we found out that that's going to take state legislation to change that category. But as you can see, the majority of our clients are not senior citizens, so those people need to have a voice and have a way to express what they need in the way of services. So, I didn't even take 15 minutes.
Well, we have to open up the public comment. Sure, absolutely. Push the bottom button till the red, there you go. You're good.
Marty Crane, I am the secretary for the IHSS Advisory Committee, and a couple of things. When we fill this committee, we need all the various voices from people who have, like Bonnie was saying, information about clients and situations and needs that we can't see. And as you know very well, the only people that come to this podium are the people that can either walk or roll in here and get to the building. None of the other people can get here and have their voice heard. So thank you for that. But also, as we fill this committee, we also need to make sure that we have some skill sets on this committee. I'm only planning to live to be 100. I may not be replaced on the committee, but I'm the secretary. And we have really done a lot of work in pulling all this together and having everything documented and organized and tech and everything. So we need to keep that in mind as well. And we have an amazing group of people on this committee now. And it's only been a short 2 or 3 years ago that we were, I don't know, down to maybe 3 or 4 people, and the ability to put all this together just wasn't there. So we've come a long way. So we're grateful for your support and respect for this committee. Thank you.
And I'd like to add, this committee is a funded committee. We're responsible for $6,000 of federal and state monies. So it's real important to us to make sure we're making every dollar count. Now, when you look at that graph that has the little circles on it, know that the IHHS providers on the bottom left-hand corner is costing all of us about $5 million a year. There's about 330 providers that are getting paid approximately $5 million of your money, state money, and federal money. You all are kicking in about $900,000 a year of that. The state's kicking in the other 1,800 or however much, 180,000, and the feds are picking up the rest. 1.8 million, I'm sorry. My math is really off. But that's only for the payment of wages. You've also got social workers that are being paid out of this program, the public authority that's being paid out of this program, and know also that other people are dipping their hands into our pockets, which is the union, and we have to pay for our fingerprint and background checks, so we're all, above board. And we pay dues to certain organizations for the information that they give us, and that would be the California In-Home Supportive Service Consumer Alliance. So there's a lot of money involved in this. You may not have even heard about this program before because it is so much under the radar, except when I come in here and open my big mouth and bring everyone's attention to it. But it's a program that we all could benefit from knowing about if we don't participate in it, or by using the services ourselves. So don't count yourself out that you're in good shape now and you may not be tomorrow, because any of us could fall down on the steps out front and become disabled.
Chair, I do have a question before.
Sure, Supervisor Mills.
Bonnie, what kind of accomplishments do you think that IHSS would like to accomplish in the next year?
You mean our committee?
Yes.
Well, we've worked 5 years on our bylaws. We researched everything, and we want to see these bylaws passed, accepted. If there's any crimes being committed, of course, we'd want to know that, we're not working within the scope of the law, but as much research as we've done, we think we've covered just about everything that this committee was intended to do that was not doing for 10 or 12 years. You've never gotten a real formal presentation before, except last year when Jennifer was here, and that's 13 years of not reporting to you. As it says, our main thing is supposed to be giving you ongoing advice and recommendation. So if we don't get the information to us, we can't give it to you. We rely upon the public authority, IHS, I want to call it the welfare department, but what are they called now? Health and Human Services, as well as SECA and the union. We get on conference calls so that we know what the latest legislation is and how it's going to impact our program, and what we need to do to tell you what to do to help protect this program. So we rely upon you in a big way, but we've never come to you and asked you to step up like we are now. We don't want to be eliminated. We know that we're important. We just want everyone else to understand how important we are, because it could be us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. You got to turn your microphone on. There you go.
I just wanted to add that The numbers that Bonnie shared with you about the cost and that this program, of this program, we desperately need this program. Our people would be sadly out of luck, and it would be, in my opinion, the scourge of the earth if we let that happen. So we desperately need this program, but if we had to just fork out the money ourselves as Calaveras County, we could not afford it. So I'm grateful for the way that it's progressing and that we're dotting the i's and crossing the t's, and thank you very much.
Okay, I need to open up the public comment. Is there any public comments on this issue, this item?
You did a good job, everybody knows.
No comments?
Mr. Chair,
Oh,
can I
okay.
add something real quick while Joan's walking to the podium?
Sure.
I just wanted to say that this committee is statutorily required. There isn't any fear of getting rid of it or eliminating it. And that our records indicate they have 9 out of the 11 members. So there is a need for some consumers. If there are other vacancies, I'm not aware of them.
I just wanted to say that, these people do a really good job. They really care about the people in this county. I've had the pleasure of attending one of their meetings, and man, they talked and talked and talked, and really seemed to want to make sure that they were doing what's best for everyone as a whole, not just the consumer, but also, the workers and everybody involved. And they heard from about as many people as I could think of them hearing from. They really wanted to get their information there. I think they do good work. I think they're important. And that's it. Thank you.
Come back often.
Any other public comments?
I would just like to, I'm George Fry, I'm the vice chair. Last year I was the chair of IHSS. I'd just like to compliment Bonnie on driving forward and improving. We've come a long ways in probably the last 4 or 5 years with all the challenges we had, and we're getting to the point where we have minimal challenges. So thank you very much, Bonnie.
Any other public comments? Okay, seeing none?
I'd like to add one last thing. He talked about challenges and threats, and there are some challenges and threats still ahead. One of them is something called EVV, Electronic Visit Verification, which is intended to root out all the fraud that's going on. They're going to require a gizmo, some kind of electronic something or other, whereby we have to check in and out every time we change a service that we provide. It's very cumbersome. There's a lot of concern that it violates our confidentiality of our clients. So that's one thing that we're anticipating happening in the next year. And as you know, we had to do our own fingerprints and background checks several years ago. That was to eliminate fraud too. So there's all kinds of layers of bureaucracy that are added onto this program over and over that suck money out of the services and give, excuse me for saying, but a bunch of pencil pushers a job with benefits that we do not have. We do not have benefits. So the challenges and threats to this program are very real, and we will probably be coming to you to ask you to help us fight the different obstacles that are coming before us.
Thank you. Supervisor Germany, your light's on?
Just ready to make a motion to accept the report.
It's not an
Oh,
action item,
then
it's
there
an
we go.
information item. So we want to thank you so much, and before you leave, Marty, you came to the podium earlier today and said that you were kind of been out of commission for a couple of months, and I know why. I'm not sure everybody out there understands why, but Marty lost her husband. It's been like not quite 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
Bill Crane. And excuse me if I get a little bit emotional because I knew Bill for a long time. I worked on many projects with Bill. Bill was instrumental in a lot of things in the community in Valley Springs. He was heavily involved, like you are, in Red Cross. He will be dearly missed, Marty, dearly missed by not only myself, but many members in the community. So on behalf of the board, speaking of the board, our condolences to you and for your loss.
Thank you. I just want to say that we haven't lost him. As I shared with him when he said, you know, I sent out an update, a text update every day for 2 months to a lot of people and hope that they would share. There's a lot of value in learning by sharing. And so we'll be having a celebration of life / community on June 30th here at the town hall. And but we haven't lost him because he asked me, he says, you know, I'm not really sure where I'm going, you know, after all this is over. And I shared with him that, you know, a lot of people are very passionate about where they believe that they will be going after this life. And that gives them peace and solitude and comfort, and that is wonderful. But no one really knows for sure. But I can promise you one thing's for sure. All the fingerprints that you put on this community and all the, by the way you lived your life and the fun and games that we had while we played together as a community and did solid work as a community, that's planting seeds. And in one of the responses to the update, someone said, Bill planted a lot of seeds. We can expect a lot of beautiful wildflowers, a few weeds, but a lot of wildflowers. And he is firmly planted in my heart and your heart and your heart and your heart and your heart, which is the case with everyone that we love. And so when I would sign off on all the text, it was always sprinkle, sprinkle, because it was all about sprinkling love and kindness. So let's just go forth and sprinkle, sprinkle. Thank you.
Yeah, June 30th, San Andreas Town Hall from 1 to 6 p.m.
Mr. Chair, could we take a 5-minute break?
Yeah, we'll take a 5-minute
Thank you.
break to allow the breakdown. All right, we are back in session. Madam Clerk, item number 23.
So before I introduce item 23, I'd like to do the report of closed session held at lunchtime. Public Employee and Performance Evaluation, Government Code Section 54957B1, Title Planning Director. The board received a performance evaluation and there was no reportable action taken. Item 23 is from the Administrative Office to adopt a resolution supporting CCWD and other water agencies and counties voicing support for the outcome of the AB 142 process and the desire for legislation to be carried forward implementing the recommendations of the report and its special provisions that include wild and scenic designation of approximately 37 miles of the upper McCollum River.
Mr. Moss?
Good afternoon. Brian Moss, Administrative Office. I have Mr. Dave Egerton joining me today. Very last minute, went back to the back of the room and said, would you like to join me at the front table? And there's actually a reason for that, because today is really in support of water districts, including CCWD, on the McCollum River Wild and Scenic designation. So as this presentation goes forward, I think his presence will become even more evident. So thank you for this opportunity today to come speak with you about this. The Board of Supervisors already did support the district on the Moke River Wild and Scenic designation. This is actually a follow-up to that, and we'll get into the meat and potatoes of that as we move through this this presentation. So thank you again for being here. So the first slide here, we're talking about the California Wild and Scenic Rivers Act. You may be aware it was passed into law in 1972 for the purpose of preserving designated rivers or segments of those rivers that are free-flowing and possess extraordinary wildlife, fishery, scenic, or recreational values. You also may be aware of Assembly Bill number 142 that was signed into law on October 5th of 2015 that required the Secretary of the California State Natural Resources Agency, and we'll refer to them as the CSNRA from here on out, to evaluate 5 segments of the North Fork McCallamy River and McCallamy River for inclusion into the California Wild and Scenic River System. There are 5 segments that have been considered, and we'll see a map of this in a minute, and that is segment A1 that you see is the North Fork Moke River from 0.5 miles downstream of the Salt Springs Dam, which is, of course, is what I would call a high country end of the river. That's at the confluence. This is considered potential recreational. A2 is the Bear River confluence of 0.5 miles down upstream of Tiger Creek Powerhouse, considered wild. And again, you'll see this in a few minutes. Segment B, North Fork Moke River from 1,000 feet downstream of the Tiger Creek Afterbay Dam to State Highway Route 26. That is being considered as designated as scenic. C1, again, North Fork from 400 feet downstream of the small re-regulating dam, at the outlet of the West Point Powerhouse to the southern boundary of section 12, and it gives you the township and range there. It's considered wild. Section C2, again, boundary confluence of the North and Middle Forks McCallamy River, which is recreational. Moving on quickly to D, this is the main stem of the McCallamy River from the confluence of the North and Middle Forks to 300 feet upstream of the Electric Powerhouse, and everybody knows where Electric Powerhouse is, considered scenic. And then finally, the mainstream McCallamy River from 300 feet downstream of the small re-regulating dam downstream of the Electric Powerhouse to the Pardee Reservoir, and that's considered recreational. So with that said, this is the map that kind of outlines what we're looking for in the segments A, B, C, D, etc. here along, starting up here at the reservoir. And this is actually even more explanatory because this gives you, and I'm sorry that that's a bit blurry, at least it is for my eyes. Anyway, it does give you the recreational and the scenic, etc. Designations as you move down the river. And maybe we can do this and get a little bit of a better. No, let's try this. That's better. So you can see the scenic, and then of course the wild and the recreational there, and it volleys as it moves down the stream. Okay, or I shouldn't say it run down the stream, it's actually the river. So that is the aerial depiction of what the proposal is today. So not a surprise to anybody in this room that over the last 30 years, there have been various groups who have worked towards designating all, if not part of, the Upper Moke River as either a state or federal wild and scenic. And I'll tell you in a few minutes why it's not a good idea to be federal wild and scenic. As a result of that, one of the more recent pieces of legislation was SB 1199, brought forth in 2014. It was introduced without input from our counties, Calaveras and Amador water agencies as well. It obviously was opposed by CCWD, CPUD, and Amador Water Agency, and of course Jackson Valley Irrigation District, and community groups throughout the region. Again, not a surprise there. There have been stakeholder meetings even held in McCallamy Hill. SB 1199 failed to move forward, and primarily, even though there was a chance that something like this would get through Sacramento, there was a lot of concern stated from the locals saying this is a water source and this is a needed water source for the future of our jurisdictions, our water districts, and our counties. So in 2015, Bigelow went ahead and introduced a compromise bill. This allowed for the California Wild and Scenic Rivers Act that required the CSNRA to study and submit to the governor and the legislature a report that analyzes the suitability or the non-suitability and eligibility of proposed Mokelumne Hill segments to the Wild and Scenic River system. And again, a compromise bill, again, because of the outcry of our water districts and our counties. So essentially what this did is that it required input from local agencies on long-term water needs for Amador and Calaveras County, which is, I think, a pretty nice concept. Again, we are a source county for surface waters. Everybody's aware of that. And there is a real need to protect those, not just from the environmental standpoint, but certainly from a resource standpoint as well. So the study was released. The final part of it was released on April 18, 2018. It concluded that the studied 5 segments of the Mokelumne River, which is approximately 37 miles, are indeed suitable for California Wild and Scenic designation. It also does not include areas with PG&E facilities, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail here in a couple slides. It includes specific information and recommendations for the designation of the proposed Mokelumne River segments that we looked at on slide number 2. So on April 25th, 2018, CCWD board took action to support the CNRA report. And this is absolutely critical for everybody to understand, with special provisions and desire for it to be enacted into law, okay? Because we think of wild and scenic, and we think about we may lose reservations, we may lose rights, etc., on the river, which is not something that will certainly work for us. So the 5 special provisions are as follows. So special provision number 1 says it will not affect existing water rights. Absolutely critical, okay? I don't care if you're talking about the Stanislaus River, I don't care if you're talking about the Mokelumne River, but we don't want to lose water rights for the public agencies, the public water agencies in Amador, Calaveras, and or Alpine counties. Special provision number 2 is provides a pathway for water agencies to obtain new water rights for local water agencies. Again, you know, our counties right now, we're still considered very rural, but over a period of time, that can change. And certainly, you cannot grow a community without a water source. And everybody's well aware of that. And just look at LA and how they turned a desert into a city. And we won't talk about where they got their water. Special provision number 3 shall not affect PG&E facilities. I already discussed that. And or Roaring Camp Mining Company, which my understanding is on the Amador side of the river. Neither the governor or the state agencies can apply for federal wild and scenic designation for the Mokelumne River. This is why I mentioned federal a few minutes ago. Federal is much more restrictive. We don't want more restrictive things. We want to have a balance between the recreational, the wild, the scenic, et cetera, the actual use of the river, but at the same time, we don't want to have our hands tied wherein we won't be able to, again, have water rights or water reservations or even water growth or changes. Special provisions shall control any conflict with state wild and scenic act. So these special provisions really assure that county water agencies may certainly fully exercise their existing water rights without any impact from wild and scenic legislation, and that certainly makes sense and is consistent. Maintain and replace facilities on the river as needed. You know, Dave can certainly speak more to this than I can, but as an example, I know CCWD pulls water out of the Calaveras below Hogan Dam, and there's every now and then they may have to do some kind of work on their pumping and or siphon systems, okay? And or replace them simply because they get clogged up. So that's a very important fact here. Pursue new water rights and new facilities, population, or climate change demand. And that's kind of what I was touching on just a couple minutes ago. Even though we're very rural, and we probably will always be rural, we will certainly continue to see an impact. And we do see that a certain amount today. I would say even, from the Bay Area and from the Valley. So wild and scenic designation with special provisions prevents potential water grabs by deep pocket entities from outside Amador, Calaveras, and Alpine counties, and I'll leave that to your imagination. Now, it also protects all parties. All parties will defend special provisions throughout the legislative process, and this includes water districts and counties, including East Bay Mud. So if you were thinking I was talking about East Bay Mud before, I might not have been. Foothill Conservancy and Friends of the River. So a quick note on CAL FIRE and timber harvesting here. CAL FIRE, I believe, is in the room as well today. And thank you. And they certainly strive to avoid retardant from impacting waterways. I mean, we think about our own Butte fire, and certainly that fire unfortunately made its way across the river. So they do their best to avoid that when in proximity to a waterway. How important is that? Drinking water supply, at least in a raw source. A retardant line is often tied in with the waterway using bucket drops from a helicopter with water. These guys are masters at that. CAL FIRE's they are absolute masters about how they do this kind of program, especially in an area like as considered as sensitive as this. CAL FIRE does not anticipate any changes to firefighting strategy as a result and/or tactics if the Moke River is designated as wild and scenic. And now it's important to note that there may be timber harvesting restrictions within 200 feet of either side of the McCullough River if it is designated as wild and scenic.
We need to take a break. All right, we're back. Apparently somebody was trying to break in and not break out, so.
It was a frog.
The frog.
Yes, Jeremiah.
And I don't even know what to say about that because I can't upstage yet with this presentation, certainly. Anyway, so with that said, what's next? Down to the meat and potatoes of this. Final study with special provisions language will be presented to stakeholders for review and consideration of support. Potential legislation drafted carrying the recommendations of the AB 142 study. And if local agencies don't have control of the bill, the special provisions could be stripped out. Unacceptable, okay? Obviously, which certainly would be devastating to the county's future. So with that said, I'm going to open this to questions of the board. And I have Dave here, fortunately for me, who has the water district perspective on this.
Supervisor Mills, your light is on. Do you have questions?
I almost feel like I've lived this from its very inception as a director at CCWD. Where are we at with the budget trailer bill? Is it a possibility?
There are efforts underway to try to make that happen. In Supervisor Mills, and sorry, I almost want to call you Director Mills. They feel like we're stepping
That's all right.
And thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. I appreciate you considering this item today. First, you just got to see you've got an incredible staff person here, Brian, to work with on water issues. He is passionate about these issues, and it makes it really enjoyable to work with him on these. There's an ongoing effort to try to take the results of the AB 142 study, including for us what's most critically important are those special provisions that Brian did talk about, those 5 provisions, which fundamentally make sure that we do not compromise our water rights or our water infrastructure that we have. We have no stranded assets as a result of the designation. And it's not just us saying that. We've had our legal counsel, expert water law counsel, to be able to look at every word, every iteration of this, to be able to say that this protects our interest. So ideally, from our perspective, the best outcome would be if this does move forward in this session so that we can incorporate the outcome of this very long and arduous process to get to the final report in the language that we have, and have that incorporated whole cloth into the law. There are other examples within the state. We work from those to end this effort. Other river systems like the Yuba and Cache Creek and that included special provisions around the designation. So as they were designated by law under the Wild and Scenic Act, they included those provisions as well. That's what we're trying to do. Our main concern, though, is that we don't want the legislative effort to undermine the work that's been done to reach this result. And it has been a very long, arduous process to get here. The bottom line, this report under 142 is really to determine whether it was suitable for designation in the context of the long-term water supply needs of our communities and in these watersheds. And to really understand that, we had to be able to present information to the state as water agencies, and that's my colleagues and friends with Calaveras Public Utility District, Amador Water Agency, Jackson Valley Irrigation District, in particular, for us to be able to present our long-term needs within our counties and the water supplies we thought were necessary to serve those needs. And so we went through a lengthy process before the report was prepared, doing our own individual reports on each side of the river to determine what our needs were. And that was then brought forward into the report by the resource agency staff to develop the final language that we see. And I've got to say they did a brilliant job. Fine people there at the resource agency and their consultant that did this work. Very inclusive, very transparent. I think it was like 16,000 comments I believe they got on the report itself, and they went above and beyond to really try to understand our needs and issues, and we spent many hours with them going through different versions of this. So,
And you've achieved a very broad level of support that's almost not been heard of in the McCollum in literally decades, and I appreciate the effort that has been taken by all the stakeholders here to finally come to an agreement on what is best for all of us. So thank you to, I see Donna's back there and Rich. It's like you can name names, Joel, because you all have been involved in this very directly and personally for years. And it's a long overdue process that we need to get a conclusion to. So thank you for your work.
And in Supervisors, you mentioned that we were in a very adversarial position with SB 1199. It was, we were all, we were divided. We were investing a lot of time and financial resources either to try to move that through if you supported it, or in case of our water agencies to end it. And fortunately, Assemblymember Bigelow gave us an alternative pathway where the fundamental issue of whether water supply needs could be met within the context of the designation gave that the proper forum to be thoroughly analyzed and resolved. And again, I feel like we've done that. So thank you.
Supervisor Oliveira.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for coming, Dave. A quick question, probably for clarification. Once a designation is made by Wild and Scenic, can that ever be reversed on state level?
Reversed on a state level, I would suspect it would require a legislative act, which would be highly unlikely. Just to note, on the federal designation side, that is a really important component, and I appreciate Matt being here from our Congressman's office, McClintock, and I know that our Congressman is very passionate about this issue, but we strongly do not want to see a federal designation move through, as Brian indicated, and this really makes it harder for that to happen, because this provision would actually say that the governor, the state itself, could not file for a designation, which is one of the two pathways for filing for designation on the federal side. So that really does make a big difference.
Okay. And another question for clarification. How much recreational use will we lose from this river of the 5 segments, whether it's designated as scenic, recreational? Is there a give and take on that?
As far as lost recreation, I don't think that you would lose recreation. To me, this is entirely supportive and compatible with recreation. Really what it does is it prevents the construction of any new dam on these segments, which, to be completely candid with the members of the board and the public, our local agencies have no intention to build a facility on those stretches. This is not where we plan to take water resources in the future. We, particularly in our communities, will either be upstream or downstream, and we can make it work within the constraints of a wild and scenic designation. This, frankly, really, when you really get into the minutiae of this, there are so many other challenges moving forward on future water projects and water rights, particularly around environmental laws, that this will not tip the scales one way or the other. We will be able to meet this requirement and still get our projects accomplished.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Any other questions? If not, I'll open up to public comments on this item.
Good afternoon. Al Segala, Taxpayer Association. I appreciate an excellent presentation. And if you can return to the slide which shows the tributaries and the extent of control. I'd like to read a letter. It's such an excellent letter. I didn't write it. Anthony wrote it with a lot of research. But this is to Gary Tofinelli, Chairman. The Calaveras County Taxpayer Association voted on May 9th, 2018 to oppose the proposed state designation of the Macomb River as a state wild and scenic river. We ask you to carefully consider the following points before voting on whether or not you will support the designation. Number one, is locking up the river's potential use in perpetuity good public policy? The proposed designation means that no additional dam or reservoir may be added to the river. But ECORP Consulting Incorporated, Calaveras County Long-Term Water Needs Study dated October 2017 concludes that if a wild and scenic designation is established for the upper reaches of the Macomb River, the water districts may be affected even in baseline conditions with their ability to supply water on a prolonged drought. Therefore, we will need more water storage, but the state wild and scenic designation would foreclose that opportunity regardless of how much conditions change. Number two, shouldn't additional water rights for electric power generation and future growth of industrial, commercial, and agricultural land uses be made available and support population and economic growth? Current water rights on the Macomb River are for domestic and agricultural use only. Future additional water rights will be limited to domestic use only if the river is designated a wild and scenic river. Number three, attorneys for the Amador and Calaveras County water agencies have drafted 5 special provisions intended to protect water rights in both counties. How do we know if the state legislature will include all 5 of those provisions in a bill to designate the Macomb River as wild and scenic? We know that draft bills are subject to last-minute changes before a vote. And last, the Calaveras County water agencies and the Amador County water agencies currently support wild and scenic designation of the Macomb River is based on fear, not collaboration. The water agencies fear a water agency in Southern California will build a dam on the Macomb River and make most of the water there, thereby restricting the water supply needs for the future.
Any other public comments?
Good afternoon. I'm Donna Leatherman, District Manager for Calaveras Public Utility District. I've been working on these efforts with the other water agencies and counties that have been involved, and just would like to reiterate everything that Dave has said. It's been a long process. I would hope that they would not undesignate it after all of this, please. And our Board of Supervisors, or our Board of Directors did send a letter of support in the efforts moving forward, and I'd like to submit that for your consideration in support of the designation as well.
Good afternoon, Vicki Reinke, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Calaveras County Republican Party regarding the wild and scenic, and I know we're not here to discuss the merits of whether we should have a wild and scenic, but I do want to go on record. The Calaveras Republican Party has always opposed any wild and scenic river designation. We opposed SB 1199, the 2014 Wild and Scenic River Bill authored by Senator Lonnie Hancock. At the time, all the water agencies were also opposed, and it did come up on this screen, so I was glad for confirmation on that. The bill never went through, and the final vote was never passed. Then came AB 142, a wild and scenic study bill authored by Assemblyman Frank Bigelow and the Republican Party supported the initial bill that required a study to be done on the Mokelumne River before any wild and scenic designation could be brought back to the legislators. And AB 42 was amended, and CCRP, we pulled our support and took an opposed position on this bill because it was no longer a bill to require a study, just a study, but a bill that led to a temporary wild and scenic status on the Mokelumne River. You know, how did we get there? And then the study was completed and the public meeting was held in February in Mokelumne Hill for public input. And the Calaveras Republicans spoke in opposition to the wild and scenic designation at that time. And we sent a letter in response to the draft study report. And as you can see in this, it was in the documents you had in your packet, section 7.2 draft report and public meeting section, that we are on record as does not support. So the CCRC did receive, and that's the Calaveras Republican Central Committee, we did receive a nice presentation on this proposal for a wild and scenic designation, and that's the piece for us that we cannot support a wild and scenic designation. Sadly, this does. It's not just asking for some stipulations on things, but it's actually going to become a permanent wild and scenic river. And after review and discussion, our board recommended that we stay neutral on this proposal until a bill is written and we can study the bill to determine a position at that time. Because this isn't in any kind of legal language, we as citizens understand that things can change very quickly on a bill, just like AB 142. So we're going to wait until it is a bill and then come forward with our reasons why we would oppose or support. And I wish that you would consider that as well as a board. You're responsible for future generations in this county, and that was always our concern. When you lock up a river permanently, not just us locally,
Thank
but
you.
what about the state? Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Nick Cashy. I'm the Deputy Chief Operations for CAL FIRE Tuolumne Calaveras Unit, office in San Andreas. Wanted to comment and provide some clarity on some information or perhaps misinformation regarding the wild and scenic designation as it relates to fire suppression. The wild and scenic designation does not affect our ability to use fire retardant. As stated in the presentation, we strive to keep it out of the waterways. Somewhat self-correcting due to our fixed-wing aircraft. If you think of a canyon, the narrower it gets towards the water, the less ability they have to get down that low, which our rotary wing is used for water dropping. But this designation does not affect our ability to safely and aggressively attack fires in the area, and we remain committed to doing that. Thanks.
Thank you, Chief.
Hi. At the fair, I talked to a guy that likes to go up into the wild country and fish, and he has to go way up, way out of line to find a place to fish that is free of pot growing and the people wanting to protect their crop. I also like to go places like that, and I find myself trepidatious about doing that because there's a lot of pot growing that is not legal, but they're doing it, and you put your life.
Oh, hold on, okay? Hang on.
You put your life.
We need to talk about the river designation.
I know,
not
but
pot.
this is what I am talking about.
Okay, but not pot. Okay.
Well, it's got to do with pot. Anyway, there are water rights that we do have. And I personally feel that we have San Joaquin Valley and other valleys that source counties need to consider because we like to eat. And I do not think cutting off farmers and ranchers from water in favor of shipping it down south is a good idea. And to me, this is where this is going. You talk about deep pockets. That's where it goes because they can get more money down south than they can get here. And they asked our good citizens to cut back on their water use during the drought. And those very same people that did this here in this county have had their water rates hiked up over, I don't know exactly how much, but a lot. And they are up in arms about that, and I don't blame them. So when people say that there's not an impact on things that are going on now, I don't agree. And I understand that CAL FIRE just said that it won't affect them. But if you have a restriction on fuel buildup along the river, then that puts a lot more red tape for them to cross to keep the fuel buildup down, to keep something happening like the Butte fire. Thank you.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Rich Farrington. I'm from the Amador Water Agency. Our board president has asked me to address you today on this issue. I'm going to pass out resolutions from our board and Jackson Valley Irrigation District supporting the AB 142 study and the recommendations, and also a letter from the Amador Board of Supervisors supporting legislation implementing the recommendations.
Excuse me, you'll have to give it to the board clerk.
Okay. I've also included in the package a copy of the Calaveras County Water District letter, which we work real close with, and they have a copy of the recommendations from the 142 study and the actual 5 special provisions in case you haven't seen those. Unlike previous versions of wild and scenic designations, the 142 report and recommendations preserve local access to water rights, and they would prevent deep pocket outside water agencies from raiding McCalmy River water and sending it to LA or the Bay Area. I have confidence that the legislation with the special provisions can pass the legislature because of the broad stakeholder support that we have. We fully support the resolution recommended by your staff. That's Resolution 3758, and we urge you to adopt it. Thank you.
Benjamin Stopper, District 5. Although I grew up in McCalmy Hill all my life, I mean, from the time I was 7 years old, I used to run down to the McCalmy from my house to go fishing constantly. I love how it is. I would like to preserve how it is. Originally, I was against the original wild and scenic designation, just for it tying our hands and being able to sustain our own area with our water rights. I think these gentlemen have done a lot of good work, and the realization that we're a very small minority in our state that progressively will probably do wild and scenic whether we want them to or not. So these recommendations and these provisions gives us the opportunity to protect what we have to a certain point. Although I don't necessarily agree that it will stop any water from going to LA, because as soon as that water leaves our county line, we lose control and they'll find another way of acquisition. But I do support these provisions because the way the state generally will go will be the opposite of what we generally want, so we might as well work towards a common goal and still protect our rights. Thank you, gentlemen.
My name is Catherine Evett, and I'm a resident of Amador County, but I'm the president of the Foothill Conservancy, which has members in both Amador and Calaveras counties. I'm here to urge you to support your local water agencies and to support your many local residents who are in favor not only of protecting your local water rights, but protecting our local river for us in perpetuity. We've got a great deal of support in Amador and Calaveras County for protecting the river, and with all the hard work that's gone into the special provisions that are in the AB 142 recommendations, I think we've laid the groundwork here for something that should work for everybody, where we get to have a river and we get assurances that there's water for our county's future. I want to mention that over time, we've had support for about 75 appointed and elected Amador and Calaveras County officials, over 100 local businesses. As Mr. Egerton mentioned, there were more than 1,600 comments, or maybe it was Mr. Moss, on the AB 142 study, and the overwhelming majority of those was in favor of the recommendations. I did want to clarify something about timber harvesting. It's not that it's restricted within 200 feet. It's just subject to a special assessment that the timber harvest will protect the river resource. And I've spoken with foresters at SPI, I've spoken with CAL FIRE folks, and timber harvest plans and fuel reduction projects are not turned down because they're adjacent to wild and scenic rivers. Important point to point out in terms of future water supply, and this is highlighted in Calaveras County's long-term water district study. What our local water agencies are looking at is water and storage on tributary streams, not on the North Fork and main stem, and the wild and scenic designation would only protect the North Fork and main stem. One of the big advantages of securing a wild and scenic river for our communities is it has tourism branding value. The Calaveras Visitors Bureau has long supported this because they recognize that. The other thing that I have seen over time is it has value in attracting grant funds for our communities. There have been fuel reduction projects in the past that are prioritized because they're in the watershed of a wild and scenic river. They're youth recreation grants. There's a lot of good that can come from this. And I think we've worked hard to get to this point. My organization and Friends of the River fully supports the recommendations, including the special provisions, and we very much hope that you will join your water agencies, the Amador County Water Agencies, and Amador County Board of Supervisors in doing likewise. Thank you.
Bonnie Newman from Double Springs, where water is plenty. It gushes right out of the ground, so we've never really had a concern about water. But a couple of things jumped out at me as the presentation was being made. And the first thing that cropped up was population. There is a limited amount of resources in this world. Population has gotten to the point where maybe we're not using those resources, or there's not enough resources. And how can we eliminate or reduce population? Well, quit making it so easy to procreate and overwhelm our systems, our resources. I ain't going to get a whole lot of support in that area, but that's one way we could protect our water. The second thing that stuck out to me was this word water grabs. And I'm immediately thinking the Twin Tunnels, where proposal is to siphon water out of Northern California, send it down to the LA area so they can populate some more. I was born in LA. I wouldn't go back there for anything. It's dirty. It's congested. It's awful. We don't want to see population get to the point where we don't have wild and scenic areas at all. I was heartened to hear that there's not a proposal to build more dams, because one of the things I think is a mistake is modifying what God and nature has created. There's a difference between a dam and a lake. Lakes have very shallow entranceways. Dams fall hundreds of feet. And we're talking about future generations, providing for future generations. If there's no beautiful places to go and visit, how are we providing for future generations? I think of a movie a long time ago, Soylent Green, where there's nothing left except people standing shoulder to shoulder, shuffling in lines, trying to get pellets to eat. Unless we do something about population, and I think it's the scourge of just about every problem that we encounter, I don't think there'll be an answer. But if we can protect what is near and dear to us, which is beautiful land, water, trees, flowers, I think we'll get a grip on things. Thank you.
Give this guy 2 minutes.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Joel Metzger, Calaveras County Water District. I manage external affairs, conservation, and grants for the district, and I have been very involved in this process, along with Dave and Peter and many others. And I did hear some comments about the legislative process and how can we ensure that these special provisions do stay in the language. And I just want to assure all of you that we are on top of this. We are working with some of the top lobbyists in Sacramento and working with our own legislative folks with all the districts. And we are watching this as carefully as you can watch any piece of legislation. And we've made it abundantly clear that if any of this language changes, that our support is contingent upon that, and we will fight any change to that language. And I think that the lawmakers in Sacramento realize that we have a unique situation here where we have water agencies, all water agencies who use this river, and environmental groups who've come together, who put the time in to reach agreement, and it's in everyone's best interest to adhere to that language and to preserve that and to fight for that. And that's what's going to happen no matter what legislative vehicle we take, whether it's a budget trailer bill or a standard policy bill. We will work together to ensure that language stays true to what we're presenting to you today, and you have our word on that. And if it does get changed, then we'll go down there and we'll fight to make sure it goes back to the original form. So I know that there may be some fear and some uncertainty that we might see changes, but please know and please be rest assured that we will make sure that that does not happen. And I also wanted to leave you with this. We've spent months and months working with some of the best legal counsel in the state who've looked at this language, and they've assured us that we are protected with our water rights and this county's future is safe and secure. We're not going to be limited based on an inability to access our water. And we rest confidently in that analysis from the best legal counsel in the state. And I assure you, you can rest confidently in that as well. We care deeply about these water resources. We are the steward of these water resources, and we're going to do everything we can to preserve this county's future, and that's what we're doing with the proposal before you. And we hope that you will support us in this effort. Thank you.
Any other public comments?
Anthony Worcester from McCollum Hill. I would like to thank all the folks from the water agencies, both Amador and Calaveras, have been extremely helpful because I had a lot of concerns about the draft report, a lot of them. And they have really been quite marvelous in clarifying things for me, getting information, and contacting CAL FIRE because I'd heard all these rumors from people who were fighting the Butte fire that they could not use fire retardant in the river because it was potentially to be designated as wild and scenic. So the fire could have been stopped in the first few hours had they been able to. So naturally, I was extremely worried. And I now feel much more certain, and if CAL FIRE will also just go ahead and issue a press release or some kind of statement that goes to every single fire department, whether it's volunteer or CAL FIRE or whatever, in all of Calaveras County and Amador County, I will feel even happier. But Joel's been great. So I just would really like to thank everybody.
Talk into the mic.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I have one remaining concern that you folks right here can straighten out very easily, and that is on the screen when you put the special provisions, those aren't the real special provisions. And I think in all fairness to our Board of Supervisors and to the public, that needs to come out today. You can read them out or whatever, but the actual legal language that is in the provisions is quite a bit longer than what you saw. And the type of water that we can get in future water rights that we may want to acquire when population grows are different. They're only for residential. as I understand it. So if I'm wrong, I would like to have someone correct me, but I think that before you folks decide whether or not you're going to support this now or stay neutral until you see the bill, whatever, it would just be good to hear or see the actual provisions. Thank you.
And I would just answer that and state that, and certainly this was abbreviated on the provisions, but the meat and potatoes of it, the actual provision language, I want to say, all the provision language has been supported and given to the board. I know that I probably attached more than you needed, but I do believe that the board does have the actual language.
Any other public comments?
Hi, my name's Jane Childress. I've been resident for over 35 years in McCollum Hill, and I love the McCollum River, and I urge your support to follow the water agencies and the Amador Board of Supervisors to protect and create a wild and scenic designation for our McCollum River. Thank you. And thanks for all your help.
Other public comments? Seeing none, I'll close public comments. Bring it back to the board. Supervisor Mills, your light is on.
Oh, I was looking at whether he wanted to lead, Supervisor Oliveira.
Supervisor Oliveira,
Thank
passing
you.
the baton to you. Do you have questions?
There we go. Just a real quick one. I noticed Amador County Board of Supervisors are listed in the board packet as being non-committal, but supports special provisions. In other words, they're neutral, but they support the special provisions. Am I interpreting that correct?
I'm not aware of that. My understanding is that they did, and maybe Director Farrington could give us better information on that.
It's in what you gave us.
Are you referring to the actual draft or the report?
Well,
language?
actually, it's our packet number 206, where it lists out of the 1,646 comments received, CNRA received letters from the following organizations providing written comments and taking a position on designations. First one bullet point, Amador County Board of Supervisors, parentheses, non-committal but supports special provisions, end parentheses.
Here you go.
Well, that has been superseded by the letter that was in the handout that I gave
Okay.
you.
You had
So
that.
it's a much stronger position.
I just
So
want to clear it up.
that was an early kind of a sensing of the board as we went down this path. And actually, at the time the final report was issued, there was some ongoing discussions with other stakeholders on the language of the special provisions, and there were some fairly major changes. And I actually participated for 12 hours of conference calls with 4 water rights lawyers and our 4 general managers, and where we submitted comments and back and forth with the state. So what the board, the letter that I gave you just a moment ago reflects the current support for the 5 provisions.
Okay, thank you. I got it.
Okay. Do you want me to go next? I'll go next.
Supervisor Mills, you can go next.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think there's another person in the room that has fought wild and scenic status on a river in Calaveras County as long as I have, without question. And I go back to the Stanislaw, and I remember what happened. If you want to talk about an act of Congress, that's an act of Congress. But when originally AB 142 came out, and I know General Manager Edgerton, you can repeat what I did, I said no. I voted no. It is very we have to understand that there's a lot of different types of water rights, and oftentimes the general public doesn't really grasp that, and it's not your fault. It's just the way that things work out in the state. And then we start talking about pre-14 and post-14 and all the other details. But is this going to lock us to a specific use in perpetuity? I don't see that. I think that your study has defined it well enough to know what we're going to what our needs are and what our expectations are. And it will give us standing should it be need to be implemented. The most critical provision here is provision number 1. And that is a deal breaker no matter how it flies. So if we're going to head there, the state was heading down this road, folks, with 1099. There was no options. They were going to do it whether we liked it or not. So for Assembly and Bigelow to step in the middle of it and try to find another compromise, a way to work around it, this at least gives us standing, which we did not have before in the original bill. So as long as those 5 provisions stay in place, I am fully in support of what the districts are trying to do. I think you've gone above and beyond in trying to prove your case. And so I will continue to hold that support from my position.
Supervisor Garamendi, do you have questions or comments?
I think we all need to recognize that something spectacular is happening here. We have water agencies and environmentalists from both sides of the river agreeing. A lot of us who don't normally agree on things are coming together and agreeing. That is a really big deal. I think that, the patron saint of Calaveras, Mark Twain, said, whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting. I think what we're doing is we're recognizing that the threat is not amongst ourselves. It's from the outside that's going to come to try to take our water. And so by coming together and building this legislative barrier, it throws some lumber in the road, because it may not be in my generation, but it will be in my children's generation that somebody's going to come for it. And we need to think that way in this county, multi-generational, looking ahead. So this is a remarkable act. And I think we ought to all recognize the people in this room that really worked hard to make this happen. And I compliment you all, both sides of the river, for making this go. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm going to have to agree with Supervisor Garamendi and Supervisor Mills. This is going to come no matter what. If we don't make a stand here, if we don't partner up with other agencies going forward and try and get some stipulations in there and say, hey, we're in agreement, but under these stipulations, and we hold stiff with that, as communities and agencies that serve these communities, it's going to come, and there's not going to be much we can do about it. So this is an opportunity, at least, for us going forward, because they're going to keep trying, they're going to keep trying, they're going to keep trying, or eventually just pass it without our input whatsoever. This is the second time that I'm aware of that they've tried, and I'm sure there's people waiting in line if this fails to bring it back and try and designate it what it is. So I'm in favor of what's before us here. So I will, on that note, call for a motion.
I'd like to have the pleasure of making the motion that the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors support the efforts of these districts with the 5 special provisions that are so stated, and that our support would go away should those provisions fail to be included.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion by Supervisor Mills and a second by Garamendi. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Well, can we take a 5-minute break while we break down here? All right, we are back in session. Madam Clerk, item number 24.
Item 24 is from the Public Works Department to adopt a resolution establishing the fiscal year 2018-19 schedule of fees and land classification for property-related solid waste parcel fees.
Good afternoon, Brian Moss, Administration. Actually, I'm bringing this item to you. As you see, this was brought forward by the Public Works Director, Mr. Krovitz. And this item here is something that comes before the board every year. And it's brought before the board every year. It's actually your parcel fee of $150. As everybody in this room is probably aware, $150 is collected by parcels where we have structures each year to help support the Integrated Waste Management Program. That includes everything from operating our Rock Creek landfill to our 6 transfer stations, yard waste collection sites, and even our Red Hill landfill, which is currently in closure off of Red Hill Road. This is, I would say, is rather old hat. This is not a new fee. Again, it's required pursuant to government code that it be brought before the board for readoption each and every year.
This was established in 1991?
That is correct. It was established in 1991.
It's been the same ever since?
It has been the same ever since, with a whole lot more programs added to it.
Supervisor Mills?
And just one question, Brian. Is there a possibility we may not want to relook at the table of residential equivalents at some point, considering that was established?
I agree. I absolutely agree. I do know that from a historical standpoint, that there was a lot of discussion about not only the residents, the existing residents, but parcels that maybe didn't have a residence on them, et cetera. I think there's a lot of things that we can look at on that whole program.
The reason I also say that is because with fee exemptions, unimproved parcels don't pay the fee.
Correct.
And yet they do generate from time to time green waste.
Correct.
That we have to take care of. So they're basically doing it at the benefit of others.
Correct, absolutely. And that is kind of what I was trying to make a point at, is that you're absolutely correct. You have the parcels with structures on them versus the ones that don't. And who, I mean, obviously, if I have property up here and I come up here because I've got dead trees, because of bark beetle, or what have you, I'm not saying that they would certainly take any trees to the Red Hill yard waste facility, but certainly, there's the issues of slash, there's the issues of pine needles if they decide, even though I recognize there's not a structure on the property, but I think that there is certainly the potential use there for unoccupied properties.
We charge a fee for green waste.
We do charge a fee for green.
Per cubic foot.
That is true. But as far as the general use, I would have to say that the general use, indeed, for the betterment, for the use of the landfill, et cetera, certainly that is something for consideration. And Supervisor Tofanelli, you're absolutely correct. We do charge a fee for special material, in this case, green waste. You're absolutely correct. And I cannot speak to the cost recovery at this point, but I think that's a whole other issue, something else that we can look at as well. What is the true cost of taking the green waste versus what we're charging? And maybe that breaks even today. I do not have enough experience at this moment to give you the answer for that.
Well, I believe when we adopted that, there was a nexus study on it, but at that time and moving forward, though, into the future, we were using it as cover. Partially, at the end of the day, we have to cover, and we were using it for cover, but that's going to be, we can't do that coming up, I think, in 2019?
I think it's 2020, and you're absolutely correct, especially using the pine needles. We've used as what is called our alternative daily cover, or ADC specifically, and you're absolutely correct. We're not going to be able to use that as ADC any longer. There's some good points to that. I mean, do we want to really fill up our landfills full of pine needles as well? So obviously there's secondary markets and those kinds of things to consider when it comes to that kind of waste.
Supervisor Oliveri, you would like to?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Just a quick note. Just for the folks that don't have the benefit of looking at the agenda packet, we are maintaining the fee at $150 a year.
Correct.
For year 2018, 2019.
Correct.
No increase.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr.
Absolutely
Brooks.
correct. Thank you.
Okay. I'll open up for public comments.
Sorry. Thank you, Bonnie Newman from Double Springs. I was going to bring up the point of green waste or yard waste they do charge for, but the option is to burn it, okay? And then we wouldn't have to pay anything. So do we want to pollute the air, or do we want to create a little more at the landfill? And also, they also charge for wood. If you've got a wooden structure you're taking down, they charge you $8 a pickup load to dispose of wood, which can also be burned. So we've got two ways of looking how we're going to get rid of some of the garbage that we create. whether it's green waste or wood, which isn't really garbage, because if you got a bag of garbage, you could probably dump it at anybody's dumpster if you're driving by, and you wouldn't go out to the dump for a bag of garbage. So, you know, there's different ways of looking at it and what's going to be more beneficial to the environment and what's going to generate revenue for the county. So I just like to make that point. Thank you.
Bonnie, there's one other alternative.
What's that?
You can chip it in a chipper,
Yeah?
and then you have mulch,
Yeah,
and you can ground cover. So.
That's the best idea.
Al Sagana Taxpayer Association. Usually I'm here to complain, but this time I'm saying thank you.
Obviously, do you have any words
I
for that?
concur. I concur with Al. The longevity of our dump depends on it, and with the green waste, there's also the thoughts of the methane output from it in the future, because burning it not only pollutes our air, but the methane output from decomposition pollutes our air. So either way, we lose.
Any other public comments?
I'm Steve Fairchild. At Moaning Cavern, we have a road, Parrots Ferry Road, that leads from the bridge up. And it seems to be a favorite dump for people coming from Tuolumne County. I have, over the last year or so, taken about 15 or more mattresses, beds, lumber, scrap from people building stuff. They go along Parrots Ferry Road, dump it, and I go down there and I shoveled into my truck, and I had a pile of that and took them down, and they didn't charge me for those, which I was happy about. They mentioned at the time that it is a problem countywide. They actually had, according to the man who was there, photographs of people dumping stuff on the side of the road with their license plates, clearly identifiable. And nobody in law enforcement was the least bit interested in pursuing those people. So right now, as it stands, every 2 weeks, I go down along Parrots Ferry Road and pick up trash and haul it down. And usually it's big stuff, of course, it goes all the way down, but locally. And I don't know how to solve that problem, but it's just my job at this point. It would be nice if we could catch some of them and let them know, at least, some in the newspaper, for instance, if they got fined or something. I don't know who's doing it. Maybe it's people with motels in Tuolumne County, but Parrots Ferry Road, unfortunately, is a great target for that. It's got, you get lots of visibility and it's downhill. Thank you very much.
My name is Antoinette Rambo, and I live in Valley Springs. I do use the Rock Creek landfill to take periodically, clippings or eating debris that's left in my house, sometimes wood and whatnot. But, this year is an unusual year. We had a funny winter, and everything's drying out. I woke up just last week or something, and I still had green-looking things around as I was clearing my yard. Surrounding me, the two lots. They turned yellow overnight. So I wouldn't dare burn at all, period. It's right up to, I see Highway 26 from my house. So what I'm saying, I'm going to have to get permission from one of the lots is up for sale, and then just to put a little fire break. And I know we put our fence line inward from our boundary, just so we could go around and keep that. But I like to keep a fire break big enough for a fire truck to get around and save the 3 neighbors who are all wood and the 1 neighbor's stuccoed house. But I take it upon myself to pay and get that done. Again, I take it upon myself to clean the culverts in front of my house that the county should be maintaining. They don't, Bring me, and I say, if we're going to save money, why don't we use the incarcerated help that's there sitting 3 cots. They're eating 3 meals in a cot, and they're fine. Put them to work in the county. Pick up litter. I'm sorry if we have to bring that kind of concept back, but we need to save money, okay? And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Any other public comments? Seeing none, Oh,
Getting slow this afternoon. Thank you. Bill Wilson, District 1. Personally, solid waste facility is a boon to this county for me. We get to visit it once a week. We take one black bag and we take one white bag, and that's about it. Everything else goes to the chickens, goes into the compost. Used to go into the garden. Can't do that anymore. Anyway, I think keeping the schedule the way it is, thank God.
any other public comments? Seeing none, we'll bring it back.
I would just like to just make a couple comments. The current cost for disposal is for wood waste is $4 a cubic yard, and it's actually brought over to Chinese camp, to Ultra Power for power generation. So that's actually a very good thing. It's a good use. I can tell you, I shouldn't tell it myself, but I've been here so long, I remember when Public Works actually had an agreement with Hyponex, which was a company that did yard barks and that kind of thing. And that was part of the recycling of the old wood waste there as well. Also, something was said about methane. I think that Mr. Stopper mentioned that. Within the last several years, a flare has been installed actually out at the landfill. So I know that when they first turned that on, it ran for a long time. And now I think it's more of an intermittent kind of thing, which is a very good thing. And then finally, there was a comment about illegal dumping. I hate to tell on my old department, but there is what is called the Local Enforcement Agency Program in Environmental Health. If there's illegal dumping in the county, they're the ones. If it's actually garbage, I mean, if it's white goods such as refrigerators, that kind of thing, contact the Code Compliance Department. If it's actually refuse, go ahead and contact Environmental Health, and they have an LEA program to respond to that.
Supervisor Mills, your light's on?
Just a point that both the county and the state hand crews are active along our roadways on a regular basis. So, yeah, we're putting them to work.
Supervisor Olivera?
I just lost my train of thought, but it was along your lines, Mr. Moss. It'll come back to me. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Garamendi?
Would you like a motion?
I would love a motion.
Make a motion to accept this.
I second.
A motion by Garamendi, a second by Mills. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
We will move on to item 25. Yeah, I want 25. Let's go keep going. Peter's here.
Item 25 is from the Planning Department. To receive a presentation on the 2017 Housing Element Annual Report to the California Department of Housing and Community Development.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Peter and I work with the Planning Department. This is a report that's required by state law and presented to the board. Thank you. Report required by state law to be presented to the board and an opportunity for public comment on housing development in the county. Every 5 years, we are required to update our housing element, and housing targets are provided by the state to the county, and this is in response to that. Government code requires this report, information for you to help in assessing how we're doing with housing. Also, again, provide the opportunity for public comment. The housing element is a mandated element of the general plan. It's a requirement of state law that every county and city have a housing element. The goals of the state are to attain state housing goals by providing these requirements. Each locality is responsible for its fair share, and we're required to designate and maintain a supply of land to meet the housing needs. We're not required to provide the housing, but just to ensure that the land is available, properly zoned with adequate infrastructure to support the market to provide that housing. That's been a challenge for the state. statewide, but particularly in some of the more urban areas where housing costs have skyrocketed, the availability of land is not there, the cost of construction keeps increasing, and the legislature keeps hitting us with ever new increasing requirements to try to somehow provide more affordable housing for all ranges of people in the community. The tool that is primarily used is called the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, or RHNA. It's a projection by the State Department of Finance where they look at what are the growth projections for each county and city, and then Housing and Community Development will take those numbers and allocate them to different regions. Our region is the Calaveras Council of Governments, so between the county and the City of Angels, the number that is provided to us to try to meet that housing range is provided. So for the time period of 2014 through 2019, the number that was allocated to Calaveras County was 1,079 housing units. This is how we've sort of broken down where we've done so far. Yeah, those numbers are legible. Of the 1,079, we've actually built a total of 597. That's not bad for us. A lot of communities are well under that ratio of constructed to demand, or I wouldn't say demand necessarily, but the state allocation. You can see the distribution over the years. And what's interesting, I think, stands out is we've been gradually increasing with a bump in 2016. I believe that was primarily due to rebuilds after the Butte fire. But you can see we've increased, and I think it was around 60 or so in 2013. So you see sort of a gradual increase. We're still sort of recovering from the economic downturn of 2007, 2008. But we are seeing things pick up. The range that's provided by the state is very low, low, moderate, and above moderate. Typically, the above moderate is not hard to meet. That's where the market demand typically is. That's where the most money that can be made by builders, by selling things at market rate. There are some programs available that we try to take advantage of for the lower income ranges, but those are challenging, and there's not many developers, particularly in a rural county like Calaveras, that want to take advantage of those programs. So meeting those lower income level housing needs, it can often be a challenge. To see that we've done 142 very low income homes in this county is really a positive thing for us. One of the things that we do get to use in accounting this are secondary dwelling units, accessory dwellings we call them here, sometimes referred to as granny flats, and that's probably one of the best ways that we here in Calaveras are able to meet some of these housing targets. We also have to report to the state the types of housing, whether it's built on-site, stick-built home, or manufactured, and how many dwelling units. And so this table here shows the different numbers. Again, manufactured housing is probably one of the easiest ways for market rate housing to meet the affordability requirements. We haven't had any projects that were specifically funded through any of the state or federal programs that are available for affordability. So all of this is basically just being done through market rate housing. Now there are other housing programs that the county operates that are unrelated to the construction, but to provide for financing for people to live in different existing homes. But that's not really a purpose of this reporting. It's really looking at new construction and how we're progressing during the 5-year window of the general plan, the housing element, to meet those targets. So coming up in the next year, we've got the housing element redo in 2019. We'll get started on that. later this year when we get our RENA allocations from the state. During that process, we will need to review our implementation program and the objectives to see, how we've done, and these reports that we provide annually to the state help us in looking at that. We'll then prepare the revised housing element. As a part of that, there's a lot of public input and outreach to different communities, looking at what kind of housing is necessary. Are there some programs that we have not taken advantage of that we could do better at? And then it goes to the state for certification. It's important that we have a certified housing element, particularly as legislation moves forward at the state level. More and more programs are tied to a certified housing element. Some legislation that's going on right now is looking at transportation dollars not being available to a community that doesn't have a certified housing element. One of the concerns I have is recent legislation that's under consideration right now is actually tying the RENA targets, that you have to meet those targets, not just provide for the opportunity to meet those targets. And that's something that other county planning directors and the lobbyists at different county organizations are trying to work with the legislator to make sure that all this legislation to address what is primarily an urban housing issue doesn't have a one-size-fits-all approach for statewide. We have our challenges. I think we're doing a good job in trying to meet those, but the mandates from the state just keep getting tougher and tougher. So we're looking forward to the general plan or the housing element update next year, and being able to be certified so we can continue to participate in the funding programs that are available to us. That's all that I have as far as this. This requires an opportunity for public comment. And if you have any questions, I'd happy to try to answer those.
Supervisor Mills.
Just one quick question. Is there a financial impact that you're thinking they might impose in the future failing to meet the RENA goals?
There could be. They're looking more at sticks rather than carrots these days in the legislature.
That's what I'm thinking.
And there are some really big concerns across the state as far as what the legislature is doing to almost mandate that a city or county construct housing. We have no control over whether a builder comes and decides they're going to put in an apartment building or a single-family home. That's really due to the market. And for some reason, the legislature doesn't seem to understand that.
Supervisor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Maurer, it's in Sacramento, as all over the country, the homeless issues are becoming more and more prevalent. We're seeing cities like Stockton, San Joaquin County, Sacramento developing some type of temporary housing for the homeless. There is funds available for that and becoming more and more predominant now. Is there any way we can actually use those funds and help our low income or very low income housing and commingle, not a commingle, it's a bad word, to dovetail that financing into to benefit both programs? I know it's a very broad question, but.
Yes, the housing element addresses homelessness as well as permanent housing for residents of the county. We're working, there was a meeting a couple weeks ago and another meeting coming up with a large coalition of county staff and other interested parties to look at the homeless situation here in the county and see what we can do about that. We do provide an opportunity for development of a homeless shelter. That was something that we amended our code a couple years ago to ensure that we're in compliance with state law as well as the provisions of our housing element that said we were going to do that. So there's the opportunity to develop a homeless shelter. That hasn't happened yet. Again, it's one of those things where where's the financing for it? Who's going to be responsible? Which organization or agency is going to step up and operate that? So it's a complex issue. We're probably more fortunate than, say, Stockton or some of the larger urban areas that have a much higher homeless population. But they're here. There's certainly homeless population here that we need to be concerned about.
Thank you, Mr. Maurer. I'm happy to see that we're looking at that line.
Yeah.
Any other board comments, questions? We'll open to public comment.
Alsagala Taxpayer Association. A good report, Peter, and we really agree with your thoughts about the state trying to use one size fits all. Incidentally, a good deal of our problems are coming from the state, and yet we look to the state for solutions. When I was a little boy, I didn't always behave myself, and my dad had me hold my hand out. He had a belt, and if I pulled my hand away when he swung that belt, I'd have to get 2 hits instead of 1. It's character building. Well, maybe we need to develop character when it comes to the states. Socialism doesn't work. It's been tried over and over again. That's when the government decides what the people need and want and controls it. The consequences go all the way to starvation. So we know this is true, yet we know that the state is constantly doing this. Look what it did to CCWD. It was just yesterday they convinced CCWD you better provide plans for water shortage, even though there was an abundance of water. So they put out little signs, we're in shortage. People tore up their lawns all over. Then they lost $400,000 or $600,000 in income, and it dawned on them it was a big mistake. It didn't have to go that way if we held our hand out and go ahead and take a hit and stand up for what's right. The state, when it seeks to control our local communities, it does more damage than good. And yet we turn to them for direction. One of the things that could be done on the positive side is to seek outreach with the industry, the building industry, and other industries that are involved with this, maybe as realtors, and then come up with solutions of how we can deregulate, how we can open up our opportunities in our county so that we have prosperity. The prosperity takes care of the housing supply and demand. It's a market process. It's not a dictatorial process. It's not determined by a committee or a Soviet or anything like that. We need to take advantage of the beautiful freedoms that we have and put it to work and to bring about solutions to housing. Thank you.
Bonnie Newman from Double Springs. About 25, 30 years ago, there was money to build shelters in abundance. At that time, the Women's Center got some funding and built their first shelter. The second round of funding, I think it was CDBG monies that came around, could have been used for a homeless shelter, a transitional shelter. The Human Resource Council at that time was not interested because it meant they would have to create another program. That's why the Women's Center has 2 shelters up there, 2 domestic violence shelters, because the opportunity to take on the homeless or to create a shelter for transitional housing was overlooked. So when there is the opportunity, if we don't rise to the occasion, someone else will benefit. It won't always be Calaveras. We don't need another domestic violence shelter. Maybe we do. I don't know. But certainly we should not bypass any opportunity that another county will take advantage of when it will benefit the citizens of Calaveras. So I just thought I'd give you a little bit of history on the homeless shelter from 25, 30 years ago, how we missed the opportunity to create something that we would probably be building on today instead of wondering how we're going to address that problem. Thank you.
In 2004, there was a proposition on the ballot statewide to fund for folks that are behaviorally challenged And there was $600,000 worth of funding that was given to this county. I'd like to know what's been done with that. Obviously, we can't do it with just $600,000. We need to go in with somebody. And that was all part of the Prop 63 stuff where they were taking money from people who were millionaires. Any money they made over $1 million, a percentage of it went into that because statewide Senate or Assembly didn't have the guts to stand up and take care of all of those people who were thrown out of their homes. And when Ronald Reagan became governor of California. So I would like to know what's going on with the $600,000. Thank you.
I take exception to the numbers on this report. I can't remember exactly what the numbers are, but I know of at least 12 homes this spring that were raided, and they were not housing people, they were housing marijuana. And it was the only reason that those were addressed was because it was federally generated. It was not our local sheriff's department that generated it. It was a combination of our sheriff and the federal government. How many more homes are out there that are growing marijuana and not housing people?
Yes. Back on the subject.
I'll allow her, she's talking about housing.
And so, you know, that's why I take exception to the numbers. They do not include all the houses out there that are growing marijuana and the people that are maybe staying there also. That is, it just throws a monkey wrench in all these figures. Thank you.
Marty Crane. 3 things. First of all, when Bonnie was giving us a little history lesson, I just want to add to that she knows exactly what she's talking about. Years ago, we didn't have a women's crisis center, a crisis center. Bonnie started the women's crisis line. It was a phone line. That grew into the women's crisis center. When I served on the committee, I kept thinking, well, there's men out there that are being abused as well. We've got to take the stigma off of here. We've got to at least figure out how to do it without the word women's on there. So it took a few years to see what that would look like. So now we have a crisis center. And we also, so I just want to say that, but then we also, we have a housing element, and we keep it up to date, but we never implement it. And I just wanted to say that the more we drag our feet and don't put priority towards the affordable housing that we know we need, the more human suffering expands. And we don't see it when people are suddenly without a roof over their head and their clothes get soiled and whatever. We tend to look down on them and we disrespect them. And so shame on us. So can we just please get on with it and take care of business and get us some affordable housing? And affordable for the people that live here. Thank you.
Affordable housing is not an easy issue. In Hawaii, we did a lot of shelters. In Honolulu, different parts of town, we had shelters. Many of the homeless did not want to be in shelters. It's the same condition today, only there are even more. So it seems having homeless shelters seems to work for people who are not on drugs and who are really psychologically grounded. It doesn't seem to work for others who really maybe have mental problems and major drug problems. So this is not an easy issue. What I notice here that might be helpful would be simply to preserve our existing housing stock. I've noticed that some of it is in bad shape, and people either can't afford to fix the homes, or they don't want to fix them and have to pull a permit and have their real property tax go up. I have no idea the numbers on this, but I know it is a fact. So it's good to set policy as a county to preserve the existing stock we have and perhaps generate more rental units that way. It's also good to forget about in most cases, multi-story, multi-family housing. It's generally much better for low-income people to be in with the rest of the community in a little single-family house. And the Section 8 rental program has been quite wonderful for that on the big island of Hawaii. So the kids are brought up, they're next door, they may be on welfare, but they've got Section 8 housing, and their neighbors are working, and their neighbors can pay those kids to do chores, and a work ethic evolves. And this is something explained to me by a policeman in the city of Hilo, which is capital of the Big Island. It's so basically there's a lot of things to look at. So it's not as simple as looking at what the state wants. They want us to supply a certain percentage of housing units for future population. Guess what? What future population? Where are the jobs that will bring in the future population who will want to live here? What kind of economy do we have to support and get these people in a good occupation? What kind of job training programs do we have? I don't think we do. I think we have Habitat for Humanity here. They have a thrift store for building materials right there in San Andreas. I think they're a really good organization to work with. Thank you. But this is not easy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Board. Getting on that a little bit after 4 now. Housing. I didn't hear anything about homeless veterans in this. Veterans are the people that served this country, came home, and have been kind of kicked aside. Some of us were fortunate enough to be able to hold it up and hold it together, serve our country, come home, and build a life. Some of us went over there and served and came back and never recovered, never really come back. Low-income housing, simple. There's called tiny homes. We can do that. We can do shipping containers, turn them into homes. We can give those to the homeless people. We can set up whole areas just for that. Just a shower and facilities and a place for them to go and talk to somebody, possibly get medication or an examination. A lot of those people, that's all they really need. The state, if we have our hand out, what are we? Like Mr. Mills said, a welfare county. We rely on the state. We rely on the federal government. We don't stand on our own. We throw tax money away by banning things. Thank you.
Other public comments?
Good afternoon, Vicki Rinke, Angels Camp, and I don't want to repeat what's already been said. El Segala said a lot of what I agree with, and same thing with Anthony. Yeah. No, of course we agree with a lot of things. I just wanted to bring up one thing. When we talk about housing, and so this is just something that I notice, and it never seems to get changed, in that there's, I think, different terminology that should be used when we talk about housing. Affordable housing is a term, but subsidized housing is another term, and I think those two things need to be distinguished, because when you talk about Calaveras County making affordable housing to me is what someone can afford to buy on their own. A subsidized housing is housing that someone can't afford at all, so they can get a subsidy through the government so that they can live somewhere. And I think those are two different programs. And so backing up to some of the things that were said, if we want affordable housing, you guys need to start fighting our government to reduce these regulations, these crazy regulations. And now I guess there's a new regulation that's out that says a new home has to have solar on it. Do you know how much that's going to cost to build a house now? These are the things that you guys need to fight as our representatives and the people. We try. But that's why we don't have affordable housing. So we all have kids. We know that they can't afford a house because affordable housing isn't what we imagine affordable is. That means their salaries have to be able to make that house payment. And so anyway, I just want you to keep those things in mind, and I don't know if that language, where it can be distinguished. Thank you.
Any other public comments? Seeing none, we'll bring it back.
So just a couple of comments. You know, it's accurate that affordable housing is different than subsidized housing. They are two different things, and you know, part of the mix that we need to look at includes all of this. And I would agree with Anthony that it is not a simple thing. It's not just simple numbers of how many new houses are built. The second attachment in the board packet includes all of the policies and the implementation programs of the housing element. This is something I intend to bring back to you, that we can discuss these and look at some priorities as to what we need to do to move forward with meeting the needs of our community residents. So this was just a narrow component of the overall housing issue and picture for the county, and part of the annual reporting that we must do with the state. So I have nothing else unless you have any further questions.
Supervisor Garamendi.
Thank you. I just want to, our action item, the item before us is you're statutorily required to show this to the legislative body as you produce, as you send it on to the state. So we're not having a big discussion about housing or any of our needs at this point. You're just showing us.
This
we'd
is,
have
we've submitted this report as required by April 1st at the state, and this is just a presentation to you, so you are aware of the numbers. We can certainly schedule something in the future to have a more thorough discussion of the broader picture of housing issues in the county.
Thank you.
Supervisor Mills.
Well, my question is ADUs going to be included in this whole concept?
ADUs are included in this already.
That was my point.
Accessory dwelling units.
Any other board questions, comments? If not, thank you, Peter. It was an informational
I
item.
have extra copies of the PowerPoint if anyone's interested, and we'll be posting the actual report to the state on our general plan webpage.
So, item number 26. How many people are here for item 26?
Yeah.
All right. We'll give Peter a minute here to clear out, and then we'll...
Get him safe.
We'll get into it.
Are there any more PowerPoints? I shut the projector off.
Yes, there is another.
Oh, there's one other one? Says receiver present.
Peter, could I have one of those handouts? Could I have one? Thank you. Thanks.
Why don't you make that statement?
You ready?
Yes. Madam Clerk, item number 26. Big item on the day.
Item 26 is from the Administrative Office to adopt a proclamation recognizing that Calaveras County's policies comply with federal immigration laws within the limits of its legal obligations imposed by state law and judicial authority, and proclaiming Calaveras County's non-support of the California Values Act, and that Calaveras County does not constitute a sanctuary jurisdiction.
And Mr. Chair, I hadn't
put together any formal presentation for this. The item was designed more as a opportunity to conduct a study session for members of the public, to provide input for the board to ask questions. There are a number of departments here, most notably the Sheriff's Department, if there are questions from the board. And then it also includes a proclamation should the board choose to adopt that proclamation.
Supervisor Mills?
Chair, would discussing the background be helpful to the public, or has everybody read the background prior to making comments so that they better understand our direction?
We can discuss the background that's in our board packet, if you'd like. PowerPoint here is... So, Madam Chair, would you like to please read the background for us on this item? If not, I'll read it. Did I say Madam Chair? I said Madam. At this point, you know, it's 4:30 in the afternoon. Excuse me, Madam Clerk. She knew I was talking.
So it'll take just a second for it to come up for me. I got it. So you would like me to read the staff memo?
Supervisor.
Okay. Okay, so I already read the recommendation, which is adopt a proclamation, blah, blah, blah. Background. On October 5th, 2017, the governor signed Senate Bill 54, SB 54, into law, which includes what's known as the California Values Act, or ACT. It went into effect January 1, 2018. The act makes California the first sanctuary state for undocumented immigrants, which grants protections to people who are in the United States without permission. Long before the act became law, it has proven to be controversial and divisive. It has placed local government officials in a position of wanting to follow arguably conflicting federal and state laws in the conduct of their duties without being penalized by either the federal or the state government. This tension has been escalated. On March 6, 2018, the United States Justice Department filed a complaint in the federal court in Sacramento alleging that the California Values Act runs afoul of the federal supremacy clause in the United States Constitution. The United States Constitution declares that federal law is the supreme law of the land for certain areas of law that are of national importance. Immigration is one such area of law. The federal government alleges that its immigration laws preempt the state laws and that the state laws obstruct the federal laws. The United States seeks to restrain the state of California from enforcing and implementing provisions of the act. Currently, the Department of Justice has a preliminary injunction motion scheduled for hearing on June 20th, 2018, to enjoin state implementation of the act. The County of Orange has a motion to intervene scheduled for hearing on June 5th, 2018, which is co-set with an individual and resident of Los Angeles named Dana T. Blackmore, who opposes the act. Each of the foregoing motions are pending in the federal court in Sacramento before Federal District Court Judge Honorable John A. Mendez. This study session and proclamation is designed to allow the Board of Supervisors to consider the California Values Act, allow staff from impacted departments to discuss their concerns, and to allow the public to provide input to the board. Following the study session, the Board of Supervisors may elect to adopt the proclamation. The alternative, the board may elect to direct staff to draft a press release setting forth the board's non-support of the act and/or direct staff to monitor the federal court case and report back to the board after the federal court rules on the hearings in June.
Okay. That being said, I'll open it up to public comment. Matt, you have something you want to present? Hold on. Matt, would you like to give a presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, honorable supervisors, and thank you for your public service.
My name is Matt Reed. I'm from Congressman Tom McClintock's office, here to read a letter from Congressman McClintock regarding California's sanctuary policy addressed to the chair of the board. Dear Chairman Tofinelli, I write to support local citizen groups that are seeking a resolution declaring Calaveras County will continue to comply with federal law regarding the sharing of information with federal law enforcement of illegal aliens known to the local law enforcement agencies. The state of California has adopted a series of nullification acts that aim to thwart enforcement of federal immigration law, which are now being challenged by the Department of Justice in federal court. These acts would place local communities in direct defiance of federal law and prevent them from protecting the safety of their citizens. The doctrine of nullification, upon which this state action rests, is toxic to the rule of law and the fundamental principles of federalism. When it was used by South Carolina in 1832 to ignore a federal tariff, President Andrew Jackson declared it to be, quote, incompatible with the existence of the Union, contradicted expressly by the letter of the Constitution, unauthorized by its spirit, inconsistent with every principle on which it was founded, and destructive of the great object for which it was formed. Calaveras County has a long and distinguished history in supporting the preservation of the Union and the principles of federalism upon which it rests, dating back to its earliest days. I urge the board to consider the importance of taking a stand against California nullification acts that threaten these principles anew. Sincerely, Tom McClintock. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to hand it, Matt, can you hand a copy to Madam Chair? I mean, not Chair. Now, Al, you're up.
Al Segala, Taxpayer Association. Well, we concur, and we urge you to pass the resolution. I think we submitted the resolution to you, which we copied from other counties that previously passed it. And so our contribution was to change the name of the county to Calaveras County, and we checked it, and we didn't make any mistakes. So we appreciate you passing the resolution, and perhaps someday in the future we'll return to harmony in California.
Afternoon, board members. Thank you very much for bringing this up for discussion. We've been hoping that this would come up for a very long time. What's this agenda item about? It's about SB 54, AB 103, and AB 450, which were passed and signed by the governor and became law in January 2018. Opposition to SB 54 is not a political issue, like many would like to make it. Jerry Brown and State's Attorney Alex Becerra and Kevin DeLeon have made it their personal war against President Trump. Opposition isn't about deporting DACA dreamers or other citizen minorities. It isn't about non-citizens here legally. It's undocumented aliens committing crimes and being held accountable for them. Opposition is about saying that we are in union with federal government's constitutional power to control our borders in compliance with U.S. Code Sections 1373 and 1644 and Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution. It's been said we don't have those kinds of people up here doing those kinds of crimes. But let's not forget about the 20 undocumented aliens that were apprehended in the cannabis bust at the old airport in 2016. And the more recent enforcement against illegal Chinese cartel grows in the middle of residential areas in Rancho Calaveras. That tells me that there are those kind of people up here doing those kinds of crimes, and they're not just from Mexico. They're crossing the northern and southern borders from all over the world. So this California Values Act and its companion bill limits law enforcement to reporting those kind of crimes listed, and they punish business owners for informing on illegal workers. So I've given you a handout. This is the resolution that Tuolumne County passed on May 1st by a vote of 5-0. I also believe that Mariposa County also recently passed a similar resolution, 4-1. I've read the Calaveras Proclamation, and I'd like to suggest a couple of changes. It's a proclamation. I can stand here and I can proclaim that I care about the county all day, but unless I resolve to do something, it's just talk. So I'd suggest changing the wording to resolution instead of a proclamation. And then there are a couple of other items relating to the federal government, including representatives of rural local governments in California and nationwide in the process of determining what the legal definition of sanctuary is, and also urging the federal government to recover costs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Marty Crane, I just have a question. So I think I heard in the presentation that our law enforcement would be, Calaveras County would be required to turn over all names of all illegal or undocumented aliens. And not just the ones that have committed a crime that we've discovered. It sounded to me like we're supposed to turn over every name of every undocumented person in our community. So some time ago, I spoke with someone in law enforcement, and they shared with me that in order for us to keep the community safe, we have to have the community telling us what's happening in the community. And if they think that they're going to be somehow reported and then rounded up and out of here, they will go down underground, and they won't come forth and help law enforcement by telling them what's going on. And our communities will not be safer. So I'm wondering if we're going to be making changes to stuff. I don't think I'm in favor at all of giving them a list of every undocumented person. If I'm all for, if you break the law, you serve the consequences. But that part doesn't work for me at all, and I don't think it would make our communities safer at all. Thank you.
Donna Farr, District 2. According to the United States Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, the Congress shall have the power to establish a uniform law of naturalization, to make laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all powers vested by the Constitution in the government of the United States. California's SB 54 usurps this power from the U.S. Congress and is therefore unlawful. I feel that the board's proposed proclamation is nothing more than political grandstanding and less than worthless. As our supervisors, you must stand up and show the courage that has been shown by other counties and jurisdictions regarding the issue of illegal immigration. The Calaveras County Board of Supervisors must show that they represent their legal constituents and prepare a proper resolution denouncing SB 54. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Ann Hill from McComney Hill. And a sanctuary county? No. We need a resolution, not a proclamation. Let's resolve this issue. A non-sanctuary county is very important. Many cities and counties across California have declared only to comply with federal immigration laws. They have opposed California's sanctuary so-called law. It's past time for Calaveras to follow suit by filing an amicus brief joining the lawsuit against Jerry Brown and his cronies. Where would we be today if our forefathers had not fought against a tyrannical government? When the people stand up to the tyranny, the government then fears the people. That's liberty, and that's what we're looking for. We want to be liberated. So please, as a board, please vote for a non-sanctuary county. Thank you.
It's not evening yet. Good afternoon, Board. Bill Wilson, District 1. How many of us here are Native American? You have Indian blood? I do. Okay, you're the only ones that are allowed in here. The rest of us are all illegal aliens, by God. My grandparents came here in 1847. Nobody asked them to. They just came here. You know why? Because there was a potato famine in Ireland, and they couldn't feed their 7 children. They came to Scott County, Iowa. We came to California in the 1850s chasing yellow metal. Who did we displace? Who did we steal this land from? Mexican government. We created war. We beat them, beat the snot out of them, kicked them all the way down to Mexico, drew a line in the sand, said, this is our line. Now we're going to build a wall across that. If you talk to ICE, you know, most illegal aliens are Canadian. They're white. They come across the border, not the southern border, the northern border. Poor people come from the south. They come up over that border. What do they want? They're coming to this country for the same damn thing everybody else has. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Because they don't have it where they are. They live on dollars a day compared to us. Pennies in most situations. Live in situations that our homeless don't even have to deal with. You ever been to Tijuana, just the other side of San Diego? You ever seen the outskirts of Tijuana? You ever seen cardboard shacks made out of 7-Up signs? That's basically where we're at. You guys, yeah, that's affordable housing. Huh? I agree. Affordable housing. Take that sign down and make a house out of it. Anyway, I don't see any problem with people coming here and working. If you're a criminal, you're a criminal. Some people around here are criminals. If we have an illegal alien population, it's going to be because we have illegal growing in this county. Otherwise, there's nothing to come to Calaveras for. And you guys have ensured we're going to have an illegal alien population. Thank you.
My name is Leah from District 3. In January, along with SB 54, 11 other bills became law that provide protections to illegal immigrants in the workplace, education, housing, healthcare, and fighting deportation. All these bills use citizens' taxpayer money for the benefit of non-citizens. We can't do much about that, but we can stand with law enforcement to abide by federal immigration law. SB 54 restricts law enforcement in sharing data with federal immigration officials. When a county cannot notify ICE of a release of a dangerous criminal, the community is at risk. These criminals are not husbands and wives who are here trying to provide for their family. These are rapists, cop killers, gang members, drug dealers, and human traffickers. As an employee of corrections, if anyone doesn't believe me, I encourage them to visit either of your neighboring counties' prisons. I've talked to ICE agents at work, and they don't deport everyone that is reported to them. We are a nation of laws. Immigration management is not just an idea, but immigration law is clearly stated in the supreme law of the land, the U.S. Constitution. Leaving emotion out of it and following the U.S. Constitution, it clearly states immigration is to be managed by the feds, not the states. If each state had their own immigration policy, we would have chaos. I encourage you to sign a resolution stating Calaveras County will abide by federal immigration law and consider joining the lawsuit filed by the DOJ against California to invalidate these unjust laws. Thank you, and I would like to hear from our sheriffs in the back, too, if they would be willing to speak.
Trent Fiorino, District 1. And I kind of take a little bit of offense to the comment that we're all illegal here. I'm the grandson of an immigrant. My grandfather came to America on a cattle boat from Italy, and he was detained along with his mother until they got papers and could come into the country. They called them WAPs. And I was called a WAP as a kid, didn't know what that meant. That's what they called Italians. It meant without papers. But they got the papers, and they came in. And my grandfather worked hard at becoming an American citizen. That was the most important thing to him. And he was so proud to be a citizen of this country that he would not speak Italian in his home. My father never learned to speak it, and I never learned to speak it. I wish I did. My grandfather was so proud to be an American. He came here and made it legal. Well, we're talking about people that are coming here and committing crimes. They don't want to be legal. They're taking advantage of our system. We're not talking about the immigrants that came here because they wanted to be part of this great country. So I'm a little offended when it says we're all illegal. We're not all illegal. I'm an American citizen. I'm a grandson of an immigrant that became an American citizen and learned to speak the language of the land and worked here and raised a family here and had a lot of grandchildren that are raising families as well. What this is about is saying we are not going to be a sanctuary county to illegal criminals, and we're not going to shelter illegal criminals. You need to make a resolution, not just a proclamation. We need to stand up for legal immigration in this country. Thank you.
Benjamin Stopper, District 5. I am a U.S. citizen. I was born in California. My parents were born in California. Their parents' parents came to the United States through the proper immigration process. And at this point, being born in this many generations, I feel like I am a native. There is a proper process set for proper immigration. This goes hand in hand with anything when it comes to code compliance or anything else. Everyone should be held to the same standard of the law. These people have all made very good arguments on one side or the other about how the laws apply and everything, so I'm not going to repeat them. But when it says here the Family Values Act and how the was sanctuary jurisdiction, a lot of these people are selling it that we're tearing families apart because these people's children have been born here, but they didn't immigrate here prior to those children being born through the proper channels. So that if they get sent home and they tear apart a family. Well, if I break a law, I go to jail and I tear apart my family. So we should be held to the same level of the law. There's a proper path through the federal government to become a citizen. Yes, there is reform needed. We all agree. I think everyone up top, whether they're on the left, right, agree that we need to reform it. Whether we agree on what it needs to be reformed to is a whole nother thing. But we need to follow the laws, be held to the same level of the law, and if these people are coming here and not following the law in the way they come here, then they need to be held accountable for what they do wrong. And so I support this well, I would hope they would change it to a resolution now because I heard differently earlier. I agree with Mark on this one, on the change from what the wording says to a resolution, so that this actually has some muscle behind it. But my sole purpose in this is to say, I don't have anything against any other race. I have very good friends that are on many races. I have family that are mostly Mexicans, but we need to be all held to the same standard of the law, and the law's been laid forth by the federal government, and that's the law we need to back up in this situation. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Candy Struby, District 5. I would just like to read what is inscribed at the base of the Statue of Liberty. It reads, "Give me you're tired, you're poor.
your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, templars tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Think of that.
Katrine Lambie, District 2. I happen to be one of these legal immigrants who came to this country for a lot of reasons, but also because I really believed in many of the principles that I thought this country stands for. I have lived many years here. I've participated in the society to the best of my ability. I find it really disturbing to hear in this room the statement made that somehow illegal immigrants are all criminals. I find that very disturbing as a blanket statement, and I don't think it speaks well of all of us.
Jack Lynch, District 4. I have two items that I would like to make comments on. First of all, I would agree and endorse the concept of this document should be called a resolution rather than a proclamation. If you look at the definitions of resolutions and proclamations, you quickly see that the resolution is the more proper designation for this serious statement by the Board of Supervisors. Secondly, I'd like to have you take a look at the proclamation in front of us, specifically paragraph 3 under its proclaimed. And if you look at the statement that's been prepared by staff, be it further proclaimed, notwithstanding this proclamation, the County of Calaveras will adhere to its legal obligations under state law unless and until the declared unconstitutionality by a court of competent jurisdiction or otherwise be repealed by California legislature. I object to that section entirely. The U.S. codes that are referenced here were established first. They have preeminence. And this document is saying that because the state of California came along with SB 54 the day before yesterday, we as a county is going to respect it until SB 54 is set aside. My feeling is the opposite of that. The county should stand in complete support of the federal laws, the codes that are specified here, and leave out that particular proclamation section, paragraph 3. So I'd urge you to look carefully at that and please delete paragraph 3. The rest of it I don't have any problem with. Thank you.
Hello, sirs, ladies. My name is James Hampton, and I live in Douglas Flat, so I guess Dennis Mills is probably my man. No, who's my man? Michael Livier? Okay, anyways, I know that our law enforcement all swore oaths to the Constitution of the United States. And as far as I'm concerned, if they swore the oath, they need to live by it. And the gal that was just speaking a couple seconds ago there, you know, as soon as those people jump over the border, they are criminals. That's all I got to say.
I'm Gordon Walker from Rancho Calaveras, and I just want to say that my parents from Oklahoma came here, my parents and my grandparents came from Oklahoma in the 30s during the Dust Bowl. They were back there as farmers. That's what they did until they could stay no longer. They came to California and picked fruit. They're all as white as I am. They worked the fields. They worked the San Joaquin Valley. Later on, I grew up in Salinas, California. My first job at 14 years old was picking strawberries in Salinas. My second job was picking apples in Watsonville. My third job was irrigating hay fields back in Salinas again, until I had a car, moved on. Later on in life, I got into the construction trades. I worked there. And a lot of the people there, I'd say a good half of them were illegals from Mexico who came up here in the construction trade. And I always said, I thought you people were here to pick our crops. They said, no, they pick crops for 6 months, move into something else, get a job where they can. So this impacts the job market big time. You know, people think it doesn't. They aren't taking anybody's job. They are. And as far as I'm concerned, homeless people who don't have a job, seeking employment, can't find a job, can work those fields. I did it. I'm no different than they are. Sure, it's 30, 40 years later, but they can do that stuff. There are jobs out there for everybody. So for me to support somebody who pay for their house when when the illegals are here taking the jobs, that doesn't fly with me. And as far as sanctuary cities go, the sanctuary state, sanctuary county. Why don't we have sanctuary against the EPA for their overburdening? Why don't we have it against the BLM for the things they do to us? Why don't we have a sanctuary for our Second Amendment? You know, it's just crazy, the sanctuary thing. So if we have guts, you know, we can do one or the other. If we're stuck with sanctuary, I'd much rather have it for us than for someone else, you know. That's all I got to say.
Vicki Reinke, speaking on behalf of Calaveras Republicans. And you know, we've been up here expressing our concerns about SB 54, so there's nothing new there and I just want to say thank you for finally taking this up. This isn't just about Calaveras County. When you guys take support on this, it's about our whole state of California. The state of California needs to listen to the people and follow the law, and sanctuary cities are not good. A good friend of my niece's was murdered in San Francisco, Kate Steinle, and that was one of those cases where they were protecting an illegal criminal who had been deported 5 times. This is what we're talking about. Nobody's talking about legal immigration. Of course not. And people should come here legally. So anyway, I want to just thank you for taking this up. I hope you do pass a good resolution. And I do agree on that one, be further proclaimed, that Jack talked about. It just seems to conflict with everything else in the proclamation, which should be a resolution. Thank you.
I believe that you should go by what Tom McClintock's aide said. That letter, I think it describes the situation, and I believe, I love all people, but I believe that we are having culture shock from illegals, and not just from one country, but many countries. And so that's pretty much, I'm ditto on McClintock, and I believe it should be a resolution. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mary Boblet. I represent the Motherlode ACL Committee of Northern California. We are a formal committee of the ACLU, and we have been engaging with law enforcement and the county since last January of 2017, when a campaign was started to better understand how California cities and counties are carrying out their policies with relation to the Values Act, which was passed last year and went into place this January. We learned a lot from our sheriff. We learned a lot from Chief Fordall of Angels Camp. We met with Amador County officials and Tuolumne officials, and they have some major concerns about this proclamation. They're here today. I would have enjoyed hearing from them before I speak, but it's no secret that they rely on communities all of the communities to help solve crimes. And when proclamations like this come in through anti-immigrant hate groups such as an organization called FAIR, and there is a field director by the name of Susan Tully, perhaps she was in touch with Al, when they tried to come into our county and try to tell us what would work in our county, law enforcement would tell you something completely different. So I don't believe that the folks here have any right other than to have a type of proclamation. Other people have said that this should be a resolution, but the title of the proclamation is that you don't support the Values Act. And when Los Alamitos did that recently, the ACLU filed a lawsuit against them because cities and counties are required to follow state law. And when other folks mention that state law and federal law are intermingled in this proclamation, they're exactly right. You guys are towing the middle road there because there's not much that you can do. But what you can do is perhaps resolve that you're going to create a place where everyone is treated fairly by law enforcement, no matter their background, what they look like, or where they were born, and that you're going to support your local law enforcement to help them solve crimes, because this proclamation, if you remove the state law portion, is nothing but an anti-crime solving proclamation, because people will hide in fear and they won't help law enforcement.
Thank you.
They'll be happy to tell you all about that.
Pauna Randall Smith, District 3. I just learned that my family suffered some people might think a minor, but it was a family tragedy, so I'm not necessarily in my best state right now. I'm going to be very careful about my choice of words. When I was in high school, I remember in our history book, there was an interesting cartoon from the 1840s or 50s, and it had a fat cat, Irish Tammany Hall guy standing there at the docks with his hand up, and he's denying entry to his brothers and sisters from Ireland during the potato famine. And I'm reminded today that here we are again. The people that are here don't want to let other people in. And sure, I believe that laws should be enforced, although at the moment our laws are quite unjust. We're seeing American citizens being asked if they are citizens because they're speaking Spanish. We've actually seen people get deported who shouldn't have. We're seeing abuse of power by our president. You talk about nation of laws? Come on, we have an oligarchic family abusing our Constitution, enriching itself from the White House. So you want to talk about a land of laws? Let's start talking about what's happening at the top. Now, gosh, it's going to be so hard. I'm really struggling not to use the word, but I'm really disappointed that there are people that think that it's okay to cast aspersions in an entire group of people they don't know, like we've seen in another issue. They're all this, they're all bad, they're all evil, they're all criminals. It's a lie. It's a straight up lie. Oh, I'll mention this. My family's been here since the Mayflower. I've got 5 signers of the Mayflower Compact in my family tree, which is my family was a participant all through American history in everything that happened. I have no doubt that I have ancestors that did really bad things. White man conquered this land with the gun. And what we're seeing today is another attempt to drive wedges into our society, say bad things about people that they don't even know. It's un-Christian, it's un-American, and it's plain wrong, and it's ugly, and it's nasty. Pass your proclamation, whatever, but it's going to reflect on this county. I came in here earlier and said there's good people here, and there are. But everyone's going to think we're all a bunch of racists here in this county. Everyone's going to think that across the country and in the states. You guys vote how you want. But you shouldn't be doing this. This is not right.
Again, my name is Antoinette Rambo, and I'm full-blooded Mexican. But in my family, I have 10 aunts and uncles, 10 on my dad's, 10 on my mother's. So we're all integrated through my cousins' marriages and things. We have Chinese, Korean, Black, Jamaican, you name it. We have it. But you know, everybody, including my grandmother, I remember when she was like 55, 57, she immigrated and became a citizen, and we all went to the graduation ceremony. We all were little kids, and we taught her what she had to say and passed the tests and all that. And she was proud. To this day, I have family members who are immigration lawyers and things, and they've been telling family and extended family and friends, you need to be properly immigrated. You have to become a citizen to stay here. Now, I've had family and friends immigrate to Italy, France, Denmark, wherever, and they had to abide by their rules as well, too, to immigrate in those countries. But everybody makes a choice. If you want to split your family up because you got caught and you can't prove you're a citizen and you have to leave your children behind, that is bad parenting. That's your fault that that happened. But I don't think we're prejudiced in this country. You know, I even as a young teenager, my father was really, really candid about not having an accent. You don't know how many summer jobs were able to get because I didn't have an accent. When they saw me, those people were prejudiced. Who hired you, you know? And I would have to tell them. I got hired over the phone. But you know, the thing is, I've never been embarrassed to be who I am. Here, and I can tell you, here in this town, in this county, I have been asked more for my green card than anywhere else I've ever lived. And I turn around and I go, no, I don't have a green card. Didn't need a green card, will never get a green card, okay? And I'm a citizen, believe it or not. And you know, they're shocked sometimes, but it's the truth. Thank you.
Jill Hampton from Murphy's. I'm upset. We're not racist. You know, the thing is that Obama has ruined our country. Hillary Clinton has ruined our country. They made it where we cannot say anything or we're considered racist. I am so sick of this political correctness. We're letting illegals come over here and destroy our lives. I mean, everyone's fighting against each other. It was never like that before. We all got along great and stuff. And even a lot of the black people are saying, you know, we're tired of them always using us. Now they're not using us no more, so they want the illegals to come over so they could use them now. We need to get back to the way it was and work and just be a good country. We're not racist like you guys say. They're not. And stuff. I'm sorry, I'm just really upset and I'm really tired of all of this. Please. Support President Trump. He knows what he's doing. He really does. Please.
Anthony Worcester.
You spoke already on this item? No?
No.
Okay, all right.
I just spoke an
Who's the
awful
other
lot
one?
today.
I'm sorry, who's the other one?
Okay.
Well, she spoke just last on the other item.
Let me know when my time starts.
It
Are we
starts
set?
right
Okay.
now.
Okay. I would like to just suggest that, well, first of all, I'm very happy that you folks are looking at this proclamation. I'm very grateful that after all these months that you actually are looking at the issues involved in bringing it to the public. And I really appreciate that. It's not an easy thing to do, as you can tell by the reactions of people here in the room. People get emotional about the issues, and they all have different ideas. So, thank you. And then, this definitely should be a resolution, and also it needs a few more further resolved to be sure that it is sent to President Trump, Tom McClintock, Governor Jerry Brown, and our various state assembly and state senate leaders. In other words, proclamation really isn't the right vehicle. So I did a little research on this yesterday. I used to write a lot of resolutions, but for the county council on the Big Island of Hawaii. So a resolution is used by counties for many things, but one of the things that I found out yesterday that resolutions are really good for is to simply show your unhappiness, your discontent, your disappointment that you have no power to change a state law. And I thought, all right, that's what this is. So we as a county are supposed to be following state law. Well, in this case, state law conflicts with federal law. Federal law preempts. However, a resolution is definitely the way to go, and it's a very good way of letting our governor know that we're not happy with SB 54. Thank you.
I think I'm going to step in it now. I looked up xenophobia. It's the fear or hatred of strangers or foreigners or anything foreign or strange. And I can't help but feel in my soul that the federal immigration laws are steeped in xenophobia, racism, and bigotry, simply by the virtue of how it's been spoken about in the White House. This country existed for thousands of years, inhabited by indigenous American Indians. One people, many tribes. White man came here and brought white man's religion, which totally decimated the self-sustaining cultures that existed for centuries. It's the white man who brought the black slaves against their will to serve in servitude. It's the white man who's always felt supremacy over brown people. There's a program called Ancestry.com. If everybody went and got their DNA screened, maybe we could get rid of everyone who doesn't belong here. White people need to go back to Europe. Black people need to go back to Africa. Okay, I'm being radical here. Whoops, sorry. I'm being really radical here because the problem with America is we have abused the land that we live in. We have subjugated people that we consider different than ourselves. We have exploited every possible resource that exists for the perpetuation of development, populating the earth. And I just wonder why we can't all get along.
Other public comments? Any other public comments?
Joan Wilson, District 1. Yeah, a lot of us immigrated. You know, somebody in my family immigrated here. What I don't want to see, I've worked next to both legal and illegal immigrants. They aren't much different, really. Some just didn't come here legally. I understand that. I agree that's wrong. So do the legal immigrants here. What I don't want to see is I don't want to see families detained because of their color. I've heard that people want to go back to the way things were, and that's fine. This is a good county. I do agree with that. However, it's the only county I've been in that has to have kindness zones. That says a whole lot to the rest of the state, to the rest of the country. If we need to be reminded to be kind to each other, then we better take that lesson serious. If we need to be reminded to not be prejudiced, then we have some problems. And, you know, we're all prejudiced. Really, truth be told, we are all prejudiced. I have my prejudices. But I don't want to open up a way for it to be easier to be prejudiced. So when you people consider this, think about those things. Think about Kindness Week. Think about what might happen to your family or your neighbor's family. We don't want criminals here. Nobody does. There was a whole group of people that tried to help get rid of them. But just remember, there are families involved. We don't want to detain them without reason. I don't want to see anybody put in jail because they can't prove that they're supposed to be here. I have my driver's license. I have a birth certificate. But if something happens to those, I could be in jeopardy. But luckily, I'm white. So I guess that won't happen. Just keep some of those things in mind. Thank you.
Okay. Public comments, more public comments. Any other public comments? No more public comments, and I will close public comment session on this. Bring it back to the board for discussion.
I have a question to the lady Mary that was in the ACLU, and she sort of indicated that if we pass something that we might be sued. I would like to ask her that right up front, if she's here still. Ma'am, when you were talking to the board and stuff, you gave your speech and stuff, and you indicated that the ACLU was bringing lawsuits against people, counties was passing resolutions. Is that what you were applying to us?
The city of Los Alamitos passed a resolution stating they would not abide by the Values Act, and the ACLU filed a lawsuit against the city of Los Alamitos.
So then if we pass a resolution, you would sue us?
Your title on your proclamation, which is not a resolution, does not put you in jeopardy, as far as I understand, because it's a proclamation, not a resolution. And in fact, your title is interesting, and I imagine Megan helped craft that, and perhaps it's worthy of some review to make sure that you're not in legal jeopardy. It's something I don't believe cities and counties around this area have all tried to follow the middle road. City of Sonora, by the way, last night voted 5-0 not to pass a resolution. City of San Diego voted not to pass a resolution, but their counties voted to pass a resolution saying that they don't like the Values Act. But no, only the City of Los Alamitos, as far as I know, has stated that they refuse to follow the Values Act, which is a state law.
So then if we change the proclamation to a resolution, then the ACLU would bring suit against us?
It's possible. I can't confirm that. I'm a member of the Mother Lode Committee of the ACLU of Northern California. I'm not an attorney. I would recommend speaking with Megan. It's a touchy subject, and you have to ask yourself is it worth it to promote hate? Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And another one to Matt, since you're a historian, did you also know that Andrew Jackson also sent a letter to the governor of South Carolina? He put 3 frigates off their coast, 5,000 troops on the border, and he sent a letter to the governor and told him if he did what he was going to do, he would personally go down and drag him to the nearest tree and hang him.
I'm not a historian, though I suspect my boss is, and I was aware of that story. It was left out of the letter, though.
Oh.
Any other board comments, questions, motions?
Sheriff, Captain Mosquito.
Good afternoon, Sheriff DiBasilio. A couple of things I want to clear up, but first I want to start off by saying that my job as a sheriff is to protect this community, and that's what I plan on doing. That's first and foremost. I want to go back to a comment that was made about the illegal immigrants that were arrested during the marijuana bust at the old airport. First off, the Values Act was not in play at that time. Second of all, we did contact ICE, and they never recontacted us. The Sheriff's Department and all county sheriffs, because I've been working very closely with the State Sheriff's Association on SB 54 since it was inception by Senator De Leon. We opposed it. We still oppose it. And we are in the process of trying to get it changed to this day. So there are a lot of holes, shall I say, in SB 54. It does tie our hands. A lot of people don't understand that this state bill, it's going to allow criminals back into our communities. That's just the bottom line. The ACLU and everybody else who is for Prop 50 or for this SB 54 can argue all they want. I've talked to many Democrats who felt that the bill was a bad bill, but they felt because of the political pressures with Mr. Trump that they needed to vote for it. So again, it has put the sheriffs in a bad position. And I'll also be clear that the sheriffs in this state, we are not immigration officers, never have been, never will be. That is not our job. It's not in our job title. That is up to federal immigration. They're the ones that deal with that. We do treat, and this is directed at the ACLU, we do treat everybody fairly. Now, if they are a criminal, whether they're white, black, green, illegally here or not, they get treated the same way as a criminal, and they go through the justice system. And again, I will do everything that I can to keep this community safe. Any questions?
Sheriff, there's a lot of noise and a lot of emotion around this, but just as a very practical matter, does this proclamation make our community safer or not safe, or no?
Well, it's kind of like, it's a piece of paper. It's like having a restraining order against somebody. The person that believes that restraining order is not going to go back and deal with their ex-wife, spouse, whatever the case may be. This proclamation is not going to keep the illegal aliens out of this county. Since SB 54 has been passed, we've had 2 people that have come to our facility. One was removed by ICE with a warrant. I do not recognize detainers. And the other one bailed out before we could almost figure out who he was. So there are some holes in the program, and that's what we are working with. And when I say we, I'm talking about the State Sheriff's Association, with Governor Brown to plug those holes so that we can keep our community safe. Most people know I'm a Republican and Governor Brown is a Democrat, but I will say that he has been very helpful in bringing the bill to where it's at now. Not that it's the best, but what it was at its inception was absolutely terrible. And if it wasn't for Governor Brown, we would not have the abilities that we have now. And he is still working to continue to work with us to make this bill stronger so that law enforcement can keep our community safe.
So in essence, this proclamation has no material impact on your work?
No, sir.
Sheriff, we have 3 options in front of us as put forward in the staff report. Pass this proclamation, issue a press release, or wait and see what happens in the federal courts on June 20th. You're in charge of the security and safety of this county and our citizens. What is your recommendation?
Talking about putting me on the spot.
Right on the spot, Sheriff.
Well, I will tell you this, that obviously we all know that the federal government has filed a lawsuit against California, and on June 20 that hopefully will be heard, and I think we'll have a better sense of direction at that point. I'm not going to tell you what you should or shouldn't do, but I will say that on June 20th the federal government is going to have a say in this. So I'll throw it back at you.
I'm going to assume that's a wait and see.
Mr. Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Council, can you give us any legal update of what we can expect or what's on the boilerplate for this June 20th hearing, where it came from and who's going to hear it? Do you have any knowledge of that?
Well, I can certainly, as the staff report indicated, there is a federal case. There is a hearing that is set for June 20th. It is the federal government that has brought a case against the state government, seeking an injunction, basically saying that asking that the court enjoin the state from implementing the law. So certainly once we know what happens with, this is going to be an ongoing case, but after the hearing on June 20th, jurisdictions will certainly have some indication of where things are going with it. Just one thing I did want to indicate, I know that there was a comment that referred to the county submitting an amicus brief. And that is one thing that the board should be aware of, is the federal court has, it wasn't a formal ruling, but it did issue a minute order that basically says that any amicus briefings, that anyone who is submitting amicus briefs are advised that the court would only consider briefing that helps the court beyond the help that the lawyers for the parties are able to provide. So any duplicative or cumulative arguments will not be considered by the court. So at this point, it appears that the federal court is not looking for additional input from amicus briefs.
Okay, thank you, Counsel.
You're welcome.
Sheriff, Captain, being from law enforcement and being part of your jurisdiction, I understand the job that you have to do no matter what this board decides. And I do charge you with the responsibility of keeping every resident and every visitor safe in this county.
And I accept that.
Having said that, if this board decides to take any action in the way of a proclamation versus a resolution versus any other position on this board. I want it known that I will support law enforcement, and I will not stand for a sanctuary county. I'm sorry. My military experience, my family military experience, my law enforcement will not allow me to do that. It's one of the few times I'm voicing my bias, if you call it that, as a county supervisor. It's my responsibility to you folks. We got to keep this county safe. Thank you.
Supervisor Mills.
Yeah, I had some time to do some research on the OMB 2002 study at the Office Federal. And looking at the illegal immigrants and the number of them that were jailed in federal, state, or local prisons, comparing that to the number of times of deportation and the types of crimes committed, et cetera. And then they also drew a parallel to people living in the United States legally and what were the incarceration rates, where, for what. That study was updated in 2011, and it does clearly show that illegal immigration does have an impact, a negative impact, on the incarceration rate, that there's more people out there simply because of the type of crimes they're committing. So it is a safety issue, and I agree with Supervisor Oliveira. There's enough data to show there's a safety issue at play here. I heard a reference to slaves, and I do take a little exception to that because I do recall that the Irish were slaves too. And they were brought to New York and Boston to fight fires because they were the only people they could get rid of. And so this isn't an issue of race or color, and I don't see this as an issue of hate. This is an issue of, if we're going to be a law-abiding society, then all people have to abide by the laws equally. And it's not for one to say, I am more lawful than you. But if you come here, and I will tell you that even though I'm 1/8 Wyandot Indian, my father is an immigrant, came through Ellis Island. And there were requirements for that, and that meant that you had to have a sponsor. You were not going to be a ward of the state. You had to be able to be of sound health. You had to be able to speak, read, and write the language. And if you couldn't, you went back, no matter what the conditions you came from. And I have worked in my career in the Central Valley with a lot of people who are legal immigrants. And they take deep exception to people being allowed to fast track themselves here and not have to go through the process. And for all of the residents of California to pay, in essence, a financial burden, for those that have chosen the easy path, literally puts in jeopardy us as a nation of laws. And I don't see the threat of someone wanting to sue as being a reason to stop a process. So I'm definitely in support, but I don't like the idea of a proclamation here. I think that we're not proclaiming National Poppy Month. There's more to it. So I'm sorry I have to have you stand there. My apologies.
It's okay, I don't mind.
But I think it's important for us to take a position at some point. Is now the time to take that position has got to be the question. I look at whether it be a resolution or a proclamation. In speaking with other counties, it almost comes down to political fluff. Okay, you're telling people you're upset. You're telling people you disagree. But the only way that you get attention to government is to sue them. Get them into court. That's what gets the attention. So people can stand and talk all day long, but until you're able to walk in that door and look at a judge, it really doesn't mean a whole lot. And that's my concern with even a resolution is, what is it going to mean? Is it going to tell everybody that we're upset? I think they know we're upset. But is it enough? if there was a way for us to join the lawsuit, that would be a little different situation. But I'd like to see what happens on the 20th to know whether or not this board is willing to step into the middle of that kind of an activity.
Well, to your point, the resolution or proclamation that you folks decide to do is obviously completely upon you. My job is, again, to keep the citizens of this community safe. And if they're criminals, again, whether they're illegally here or they're legally here, if they're criminals, that's my jurisdiction, that's my wheelhouse, and I will deal with them appropriately. Period.
And sir, I would expect no less.
There you go. We're on the same page.
There you go.
Sheriff, I have a question, maybe a couple questions. Prior to SB 54, and like you said, it's all political, and people voted for it.
People didn't vote for that. That was
Well,
pushed
people
through.
didn't vote for it. What I meant, legislature vote for it because of political pressure and so forth on it. But prior to it, and I know because of Trump and his stance, but have any of the immigration laws at the federal level changed?
Cap Macedo. He's my political analyst.
Good afternoon, Jim Macedo.
That was the easy button on your desk.
Good afternoon, Jim Macedo. I'm a captain with the Sheriff's Office, and the short answer to that is no. And if I could just add one thing that the Sheriff and I spoke about this morning. We are obviously aware of the federal challenge to the California state law. The Sheriff's Office and the Sheriff's Association did not sit idly on their hands. They did bring forth a bill earlier this year. That bill was to amend SB 54 to address certain crimes that are not included in SB 54 that would allow us to contact ICE if somebody was responsible for those crimes. That bill died in the Public Safety Committee. It died prior to ever getting a vote. And I can tell you that the environment at the state capitol as it relates to law enforcement or anything relating to ICE right now is incredibly toxic. So the Sheriff's Office and the collective sheriffs of the state have really voiced their opinions pretty loudly and pretty clearly. But unfortunately, realism sets in when you're trying to discuss policy and actual real-life problems, operational issues as it relates to this bill, and you're being told that policy and realistic facts do not matter. Politics rules the day. So with that said, there was a group of sheriffs from California that went and met with the president this last week, and they talked about this very issue. Some of those same sheriffs are members of the State Sheriff's Association to try and explain what is actually really going on the ground in California. The sheriff talked about our two specific cases, and we are doing our best each and every day as it relates to any conflict or any issues that come up surrounding this particular law. But I'm sorry for such a long answer, but no.
That's fine. But basically, no, the laws had not changed. It was the stance of Trump and Sessions on immigration that prompted this SB 54.
I would classify it as the California reaction to the election and some of the activities of the current administration.
Thank you. I will say this, that my grandfather also came here, immigrated here, him and his three brothers. They came here legally. They immigrated through Ellis Island, came to California, found jobs in Napa, on the farms. They worked. They always were employed. During World War II, my grandfather got a job in security at the naval shipyards. And after that, after the war, he was hired in the Jackson Police Department and was hired as the chief of police there. And his brothers moved to Jackson and found employment in Jackson. They all worked. The history is there of coming here legally, finding jobs, and working and abiding by the laws. he actually became a police officer, chief of police, and upheld those laws. That was his job. My father worked as a police officer in Jackson for him and upheld those laws. They took an oath. So the history in my family is such that we did immigrate and we followed all the laws and came here legally. So this thing about showing up illegal, and I know it's been going on as far as other industries in the state, but there are some here illegally that don't have jobs, and they are committing crimes, and I think those are the ones that we're talking about here. We're not classifying all into one group, that I keep hearing that it's all one group. Like the sheriff stated, it's his job to keep us safe, and when there's a criminal that they arrest, it's up to him to make sure that they're incarcerated until time their rights are served on them, or they can bail out, or what's in order, they can't bail out, or what have you. And if it comes in fact with identifying them as wanted by ICE, I think they should have the ability to do that. Freedom and exchange any of that information out there so they can be identified. That's all we're talking about. We're talking about criminals here. That's what is at issue here, not whether they're illegal or not illegal. He needs to have the ability to find out nationwide or through federal law whether they've committed any acts against this country or this state. So any other comments or conversation on this, or a motion, or?
I'd like to say something, is when I became a supervisor, I took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States and also the one of California. This morning we opened up with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States, not California. And I'm a U.S. citizen. I reside in California. I tell that statement to everybody. So I think that most people know how I vote just with that statement. That's how I truly feel, and I would not jeopardize my citizenship.
So where are we then?
Would you like to poll a vote of the board to see if we want to keep with the proclamation or the resolution?
Point of order.
Pardon me?
What is your point of order, and what part of the?
It can't be a resolution because that's not what it is on the agenda. It can only be a proclamation today.
Okay, but we're asking if we want a poll. We're asking for a poll right now, which we can do. Okay? We're not voting on any of it.
I have a second point of order.
What's your point of order on?
It's kind of confusing. In the agenda, it states that this is a study session, and in study sessions, historically, the county doesn't have any kind of vote that takes place after it. It's just for you to study.
Okay, we're not asking for a vote. We are polling the board, which we can do to give information and direction to staff.
But I
So
also have a point of order about your next steps, because
we haven't got to our next step. So if you want to wait until we get to our next step, okay? Let us poll the board.
that sounds good, and if it goes past that, I'm happy to describe that.
Because I figure we poll the board, we could have staff redo something, come back in 2 or 3 weeks, and we can go that direction. So I would just like to know if the board is interested in going that way or actually keeping where we're at.
Okay, so, ask to poll the board. So I will poll the board, starting with Supervisor Clapp, on whether you would like to continue with the proclamation or have this come back at direct staff to prepare
I'd like to direct staff to prepare a resolution.
resolution. Okay,
I would support that.
Supervisor Mills, support that?
Resolution.
A resolution.
I'd support that if we could if we're pushing back a couple weeks, and it's not a lot of extra time to wait and see how the court case comes out. So,
Yeah, I got turn on your mic.
I'm sorry, I was going to say I would support that But since we're pushing back to do that, if we push back past the court date,
Well, it's gonna take 3 weeks anyway if they came back with any,
So we
so
just-
4 weeks instead of 3 weeks.
after the staff can report out on what happened. I don't know, does that sound right?
Yeah.
That sounds good to me.
And I would support that. So staff, I think that gives you direction.
I just want to clarify that the direction is for staff to report back any court ruling out of the federal case. There is no guarantee the court ruling will come out on the 20th, but certainly it would be after the 20th, and we would put it on the soonest board meeting after the court ruling came out, and that it would come back as a resolution rather than a proclamation.
Mr. Chair,
Yes. Supervisor Alder.
based on county council's advice, would that action take place at the same meeting? Question would
Yeah,
be...
I think what we're asking for them to do is prepare this resolution, and she can report out as what happened, and you can determine on what happened that time, whether we would move forward with the resolution, or if it's in, the court has made a decision, or the outcome of that decision.
Okay. So the agenda item would reflect that, correct? I want to make sure that it's addressed at that time.
Chair, I do have a question. Is there a specific model for this resolution that we're interested in, or do we just want staff to work on what that model looks like?
I'd like to have the third paragraph taken off that the gentleman from Angels Camp talked
Well,
about.
you need to speak up so we can hear what you're saying.
It was on.
Yeah, some of the comments was made that the previous mayor from Angels Camp had concerns on the third paragraph, on whichever, have that looked at.
That removed?
Yes.
Okay.
I think everyone was happy outside of that.
I agree. I agree with that. You agree with that? I agree. I agree too. I do have one other question of council. It mentions a hearing on June 5th in our packet here in the narrative. Can you comment a little bit about what this June 5th court date is and what can or cannot happen on that date?
It's my understanding that the only thing that's happening on June 5th is a motion to intervene in the federal case on behalf of the County of Orange and then this specific resident of Los Angeles County. So it would just be a motion for intervention.
So it would put it on hold? It would put SB 54 on hold, or intervention? When you talk intervention,
No, what I'm referring to is they're asking to join the case.
oh, they're asking to join the case. Okay.
They're asking to intervene and join as parties in the case.
All right. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay. So we have to give staff direction. Any more comments or no? Okay. Moving on.
So just to clarify, no action was taken today on the item as it is presented. It will be coming back at a later date,
As a resolution.
proposed as a resolution.
Yes.
Okay. Can we take a break?
We can take a break. 5
Thank you.
minutes.
5 minutes.